and welcome to the Crate and Crowbar. This is episode 72. The date is the 11th of December. I'm Tom Francis, and with me here today are...
Philip Orr. Hello.
And...
Chris Thurston, hi.
What cool things have you people seen?
What have I seen?
Related to video games.
Oh. Well...
What things have you seen in your travels?
So many cool dogs. But a non-cool dog thing that I've seen recently that I want to talk about at the beginning of the pod was End of the Line, which is technically a TF2 community update, but what it is really is a 15-minute TF2 short film that Graham is obsessed with. It's kind of a shame to hear it really, because Graham will bring up the End of the Line trailer in any discussion about source filmmaker or machinima or films or music ever. And they
it's fan-made, right?
Yeah, it's completely fan-made. By a guy who I think won one of the Saxy Awards like a couple of years ago. He spent 2 years with a small team making this, as far as I can tell, which is nuts. And it's really good. Kill surprise, like
it seems to be all new terrain. Like the actual place where it's set isn't like in one of the TF2 maps, which is maybe what you think of when you think of like machinima.
No,
it's like a whole new thing. Like everything I think is hand built for it.
Like there's loads of new just assets and stuff they've created for the characters. A lot of kit and models that aren't in the game by default. And yeah, it's interesting because it's a silent movie pretty much, because they can't get the voice acting back, even though the thing was sort of adopted by Valve and turned into this update.
I wondered about that because I remember hearing ages ago from Graham that there were like this guy was making a source filmmaker film that was so good that Valve were going to make a whole update around it. And so I was kind of expecting them to have, like, the big advantage of that was then you got the voice actors, right? But no. I guess he'd already pretty much figured out how it would work and what the non-script would be.
Yeah, and also to be fair, like, I think because the update is all about like community created stuff, like all the new items and cosmetics and weapons in it are all made by the community.
Yeah.
It feels like it would be a bit out of the spirit of the thing to say like, here's what the community can get with our resources. You know what I mean? Like if the Valve comes along and says, we'll get you the voice actor so you can properly have a script for this, it becomes a Valve movie to an extent rather than being something that's a team of...
Should have been community impersonators of the actors.
Yeah, I guess people have tried that, but no, but it's really impressive stuff. Like they've done a lot of like things with SFM that people have never done before. Like it's a shot that shouldn't look mega complicated, but is incredibly complicated. That's a really great little making of video that I think the creator made for RPS when Graham interviewed him, which might be worth digging out. Which is how they did a particular shot where the scout is standing on top of a moving train speeding through a forest, and that landscape is bigger than anything you could really achieve in a regular Source Engine map, and you're moving through it really quickly on a train. And how they did it by having the trees move is really cool and clever. It's just a great example of like those tools bearing fruit again. And it just made me think of something else that's coming, which is kind of, it feels a little bit like a full circle thing for me, is that Valve recently posted on the Dota blog to say not to expect a Christmas event for Dota, much like they said don't expect a Halloween event either, because they're preparing for an engine change, which is basically shifting the game finally into Source 2, which they started a while ago, but also finally releasing the custom game mode creator. So Dota's going to get like custom game modes via Steam Workshop, which is kind of the modern version of what the Warcraft 3 custom map scene was back in the day.
Maybe someone will make Warcraft 3 in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, my God, this RTS thing is fantastic. This would be a whole genre.
And that's the step that no one else who have made a game out of the original Defense of the Ancients has gone as far as to replicate the conditions that allowed Defense of the Ancients to exist in the first place. And it feels like a pretty cool kind of, like circle of life thing.
Is Source 2 just an official thing now? I remember it being rumoured for ages.
I don't know if they're calling it that.
Right.
Like a couple of months ago, they released an engine update for Dota 2 that came with map creation tools that were not called Source 2 explicitly, but they were called Source 2 in all of their files. Like, it's like, source2.exe, but they're just a new engine. We're not calling it, what it was called yet. But that stuff, but also it was doing stuff that Source can't do, like, kind of, can't do easily, like, dynamically having someone paint terrain, the kind of, the stuff people do in CryEngine and kind of things like that. So it's not like massively futuristic stuff at first. I think everyone's expecting a new Valve engine to be like, oh shit,
generational.
like when like oh shit, physics. You know what I mean? It's sort of big paradigm shift moment, but it's not really that. At least not until they've
going to add relativity.
yeah.
No one will notice.
I'm going to add emotions.
No one will never do that.
Yeah.
I remember the most exciting thing about Counter-Strike Source, when we first got access to it, it was ahead of the launch of Half-Life 2 itself, and it was kind of a Source engine test, really. And I was really interested to play it, and quite keen on Counter-Strike. But the fact that the exe was called HL2.exe was like, oh my god! I've technically got something called Half-Life 2 on my computer. Like, not the actual thing, but it's called that.
What cool thing have you seen, Pip?
Well, I was actually going to ask a question about the Team Fortress stuff.
Of course, yeah.
TF2, because I don't really play it. Like, the only times I hear it spoken about are when it's community-created clothes and Source, SFM stuff. And so, is it really a played game anymore, or is it like kind of a film festival / fashion event? Like what? Yeah.
So as far as
what is it at the moment?
I think it is. This is a funny thing because I think of TF2 as being a popular game, and by Steam stats, it definitely is. I think it's the third most popular game on Steam. I think it goes Dota, Counter-Strike Go, Team Fortress, and to be honest, or maybe it and Counter-Strike the other way around because Counter-Strike is a paid game. But either way, like. Someone is playing it, but I do know that everybody I know who plays it, who loves it, doesn't play it anymore with any kind of regularity. Like, I mean, Tommy, you played loads of it.
Yeah. I can't remember if there was like a particular like point when I just totally stopped, but I eased off it because I got to the point where I was experienced enough to expect to succeed. Which meant when I didn't succeed, I was very angry instead of just being bemused or baffled. And at that point, it became too stressful to play because I was playing Spy as well most of the time, or Sniper, which is equally kind of high stakes but maybe slightly less tense. And so all of your deaths are sudden and brutal and feel unfair at the moment. And yeah, I just realised it was doing more bad things to me than good and stopped. But I think, like, in terms of the numbers of players, it's, I think it's been holding pretty steady, which is kind of amazing given how old it is and how, like, it doesn't have ongoing persistence or, it does with, like, hats but, like, for functional stuff, it doesn't. You don't level up in the traditional sense. And so it's pretty amazing they've done that, but like whilst doing that, they also accidentally made CSGO a bigger success and Dota a massively bigger success. Like when you look at the numbers compared to Dota, you think, God, TF2's already crashing. It's terrible compared to Dota. It's like less than a third. And then when you look at like historical stats, you realise, no, TF2 is about the same as normal. It's just Dota 2 is just this complete anomaly.
And TF2 is also the testing ground for a lot of Valve's thinking about how free-to-play works, like, and how to change things. Like, I was thinking about going back to it today.
You say TF2 or Dota 2?
TF2 is the testing ground. Because, I'm actually interested in something you don't know and should go and check out. It's like, I'm really interested to see if TF2 has had, Dota 2's ideas about how to do, like, a store ported back into it. Because they are quite different. Like, in TF2, your gear, like your weapons, your cosmetics functionally directly affect your character. So, like, there are guns that do things that other guns don't do. So if you want the charge up rocket, the charge up rocket launcher for the soldier, that's something you have to get lucky in a chest or buy. There's that kind of thing. But the other thing is that there's a significant random element, which has, the economy of Team Fortress is fascinating. Like the things people do, the gambling, the trading servers, like. Things are worth a lot of money in TF2, and even the most expensive Dota items, only a few ever got to that stage, whereas TF2 was much more common. Like, I remember when PC Gamer switched over from having a cover mount disc to having a giveaway code, one of the first gifts was like a Team Fortress hat that was like made specially for. Tommy, you kind of arranged that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like a press hat, which is now I still think quite a valuable cosmetic in Team Fortress because the only way to get it was through PC Gamer.
Yeah, at the time, I think. At some point, it was meant to be made available for sale. I'm not sure if that ever happened.
I don't think it did.
Right.
But but I remember like looking it up and just realizing that it was worth like each of them was worth a couple of pounds, like a decent amount, relative to any other game. And they were consistently selling for like a couple of pounds. and that because I was the person in charge of PC Gamers giveaway codes for a long time, I had a spread, and I had to give people spares if their code didn't work, if it ran out. I had a spreadsheet on my work machine with 29,000 of them. And it was like, if I
control the supply,
it's like, man, this is worth more than my pay. Significantly more. Like, if there's no way to get the money out of Steam, which is the problem, which is the only reason I don't live in Mexico now. Living off my illicit hat bucks. But the point is that Team Fortress...
That'd be an amazing backstory, wouldn't it? So how did you get rich? Well, one day they gave me this spreadsheet full of hat codes.
But like that, I guess that is always what sticks in my mind when I think of Team Fortress, because it's got such a legacy of being a bit of a mental testing ground. Like,
yeah,
the game was changed substantially by the way it was.
So I don't know if you noticed, but your items in TF2 have a level, and you'll just get like a thing. You'll find a rocket launcher, and it might just say level 1 rocket launcher, or it might say like level 54 and something like level 99. I don't know what they go up to, but people really value. I think the higher levels are rarer to find, but.
It'd be cool
it's
if
not
it
like
was
a progression
prime
mechanic.
numbers were rarer. Like, that would be really cool.
But the weird thing about it is it has no effect on the power of the weapon. They're all the same, of the same type. So like, you know, a rocket launcher of a certain type, no matter what level it is, has the same stats. And apparently this is because one of the things before they were worried that free-to-play games would take over the world and leave them behind, they were worried that MMOs would take over the world and leave them behind. And they were like, shit, we don't know how to make an MMO. We've never done anything, like, even with levels in it, or, like, items and things. So they added items to TF2, and they gave those items levels, just so in the back end they would figure out how those levels would work, with no particular plans for what to do with them. And they never did anything with the levels. And then, by the time that was in, it became clear that subscription-based MMOs were not going to take over the world, and were not going to, you know, replace all of video gaming. But then it started to look like free-to-play stuff might. So like, shit, we should learn how to do free-to-play. Let's make TF2 free.
Yeah, it really is the experiment. But that's the thing, like, you know, subsequently Dota substantially removed the random element from items. Like they did an experiment with chests, and I was talking to Robin Walker about this, which is I imagine where a lot of the theory comes from. Like, when I was at Valve, and like, it was like, well, to be honest, there should be no way to gamble with your money where you stand to lose ever in a game. Like, it's not a zero-sum thing like a casino is, right? Like,
yeah.
there's actually, you inherit the thinking from a casino that if the player's maybe gambling on opening a chest with a key, and there's a chance to get an item, a really good item or a normal item or whatever from the chest, it makes no sense for the player to be able to actually lose in that scenario. The item you get from the chest should always be of higher value than the key. You know, so there's no way that your investment could be worth it. And because the argument at the time in free-to-play thinking was always that, oh, you should stand to lose because otherwise there's no friction. You know what I mean? Like, it's not gambling if you can't ruin yourself. and then there is actually, no, in a video game you can gamble without having that. And that's just changed, like, it really stood out to me, like, the way they did the most recent, so the way Dota does, and this is the question, is like, because TF2 has become such a hodgepodge in a way, like, it's a shooter with like an extensive RPG collectible component that directly affects gameplay, that has substantial seasonal events that also include co-op stuff, that is also a film creation suite, really, because it's the easiest set of assets to use in Source Filmmaker, that is also a surprisingly excellent comic.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And the comic's excellent. The short films are amazing that Valve have done. It's like a showcase for Valve's best writing outside of Portal, and there's more of it than Portal. And it was also this playground for like how to do a free-to-play game. And I don't know if any of the lessons that were learned from TF2 and applied to other games and involved in those other games ever get ported back. Like, how much attempt there is to like stabilize
or tidy it up.
Yeah. And now doing an event where they, you know, hand over the reins to the community and say, just like, make stuff around the theme of trains. And it's like, and in it goes, because it's cool. Like, it's sort of back in the same way. Whereas like now in Dota, like the new chest series, they're still experimenting, but it's like, you can pay, like, there's a maximum amount of money you can spend. There's like £8 that guarantees you get absolutely everything in the new chest series without any risk. And like they've set a cap on like how much you can spend with no chance of losing out on that investment.
The gambling element is more like whether you get the rare other also thing, because you can like get all of the stuff that chest contains without getting the super rare things.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the element of will you, won't you, rather than like there being a loss involved.
Yeah, yeah. And they're still like, it's still Valve's sort of weird, like, econometric kind of like social conditioning stuff. But it's interesting how much they've learned about, like, this is totally off a cool train video topic, but it's interesting how much they've learned about how the less you screw over the player, just the better it works out across the board for everybody.
It feels like, and this might just be because I don't play much of Counter-Strike either. I'll watch it and I'll enjoy it, but I don't play so much of it. But in Dota, it feels like that they've actively tried to clamp down on people being able to make silly amounts of money, you know, like with the courier that went for like, what was it, like
$50,000.
Yeah. And so they sort of introduced gems and socketing and things that actually meant that wasn't anywhere near as rare as it, you know, was billed as in the first place. But then with things like Counter-Strike, my friend Ed had a knife that was worth 80 quid, and that was just, you know, and that's, to me, is like, that's kind of impressive money that I wouldn't see from any of my Dota items, you know, and so...
That said, though, I've told the story before about the night I made like £700 in Steam bucks selling Dota gear.
Oh, yeah. But I mean that they've like actively tried to...
Yeah, and that's not possible anymore. That's the key thing. Like, that was a one-off, right? That paid for indie games for a long time.
Yeah.
Kept me in indie games and DLC.
Yeah, I've done
for
similar
many
things,
years.
and so it's ended up being... and so I also then noticed that was no longer an option, or that, you know, that avenue was no longer open to me. But Counter-Strike, I could still, you know, maybe quit my day job if I get good enough at knives.
I think I bought my copy of Gunpoint with that money. I genuinely do.
Luckily, Valve still pay me.
Yeah, no, but I just like the idea that a hat for a wizard eventually became money that Tom has.
Oh god,
Which I've spent on a hat.
I was trying to play Gunpoint on the train the other day, but like I wasn't on a table seat. I was in one of the ones with the fold down thing. So I had my laptop on that, and then I had the mouse just next to me on the other person's like thing.
Was there another person in the seat?
Oh, it went so badly. No, but then like I gave up on the entire endeavour. But
Tom, serious proposition. If I sell 29,000 TF2 hats and then spend all of that money on Gunpoint, can we move to Mexico?
Why wouldn't you just spend half of that money on Gunpoint? And then you can go to Mexico, he can come to Mexico if he fancies.
Well, no, the idea is
he can't get the money out of Steam.
I can't
so
get the money out
Gunpoint
of
will be a
Steam.
money laundering system here.
Yeah, exactly. What I'm proposing is crime.
It would benefit all the other people who worked on Gunpoint to the same proportion as the normal sales. So he'd be making them semi-rich too.
Oh, great. Well, I mean, that's the perfect crime then.
Could you guys send me a postcard?
Yeah, sure. Anyway, I don't
know. So how much do they go for individually?
It's probably nothing anymore. Like, this was a while ago. I mean, I'm not seriously advocating we commit hat fraud.
In terms of the economics of the scheme, there's the Steam's cut, then there's tax, and then there's revenue split with the other contributors, and then...
Are you actually trying to work out
to figure
the economics of it?
Is it viable? Well, like, I can actually...
if they went for a couple of quid, you'd end up with, what, like £58,000?
Let's say I mean...
So, what would that... Like, what...
If I did want to commit Steam key fraud, I can actually just ask Valve for any number of Steam keys, and they don't really care what it's for, they just give it to me. Like, for the Humble Bundle, they gave me 1 million. Here's 1 million keys worth $10 each.
Wow.
I don't think I can make $10 million out of these.
No. Well, not with that attitude.
I wanted to set up one of those horrible...
You need to be more
Steam key
can-do
resellers.
about this.
Maybe on balance, hat fraud isn't how I want my life to pan out.
No.
It's an interesting thought experiment, though.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like,
Be aware of your exit strategy. Should anything go bad?
yeah, I need a better one. That's the thing. Like, you know, you think about like game journalism is on the stable field. What's your plan, Chris? Hat crime.
I think you're involving too many people as well. I think it's just got too
well, the thing is,
convoluted.
And admitting it on our podcast
Yeah, I was
going
to say this will be
catches
used
up a
in
lot of the best
evidence
criminals.
against- like even if Marsh cuts this entire bit out, or like Tom or whoever's editing.
What I'm doing is making the serial style documentary about my hat fraud a lot easier.
Yeah, we'll just wait to
It would
publish
only
this
be
one for
like
another 10
a
years.
60-minute episode then.
Once you're in a non-extradition country, we can release this podcast.
Yeah. Just hide in an embassy. I don't know how I got onto this from I liked the video with the cool train in it.
Yeah, it rather spiraled, didn't it?
It did, yeah. That is a full-on 20-minute tangent. Tom,
Yes.
what have you seen that's cool and thing?
Ludum Dare happened.
Oh yeah, it did, didn't it?
And that was a game-making competition where they give you a theme, and this time, the theme was entire game on one screen, which is I get what they're saying, but also when I look like,
Do you?
if the game world can move relative to the screen, then all games are entire
exactly.
game on. I never use two screens for my games.
I was going to say, like, I have a 2-screen setup, and yet, that's not. I've got like Holby City on the other one. I just got, but the world is on the one screen.
The reason I was thinking about this is that a lot of the games they feel true to the spirit, but the game world does move relative to the screen, and hence the game world does not fit on the entire screen. And so the one that I played, and I know you played too, Chris, is I don't know what it's called actually, but it's a very basic platformer where you're a little square jumping around a level, but it keeps zooming out, and at some point you realise you're controlling the whole level, and the whole level is just a square within another even bigger level.
Yeah.
And so those levels are not on screen initially, so I think if you're doing like a super strict entire game on one screen thing, you'd have to define it more carefully. But that game is cool.
The reason it does the implication of multiplayer later on, where you're jumping around the level and you see other levels jumping around the level that you're on, and like I think the moment where it clicked for me, I am tweeting about it because like I generally did find it really impressively clever, was trying to jump past. Like, so I'm on the screen and my level shrinks to the point where I'm controlling it. And then I'm trying to jump past another level, which I don't know if it's actually multiplayer, it's probably just AI or something, but like, this other level is getting in my way. And so I'm really focused on it. I'm really, zoomed in. I don't know if that makes sense. But my kind of perception is all on me trying to get past this other level. And by the time I've sort of almost resolved that, it's zoomed out far enough again that I'm now controlling the entire environment where that entire conflict took place. And it's this thing where I don't know what that communicates at all, really. Like, I don't know what's the message there. Like, but it doesn't really need to be, because it's
Could it not just be
neat.
cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a strange sensation because you, like I say, you focus on what you're doing in one level, and then at some point you realise, I just don't need to care about this anymore. It doesn't really matter what happens at this level because I am controlling the whole level in some larger context. And so you're always realising that what you were just doing was trivial and didn't matter compared to what you're going to do next. But you also know that too will become trivial in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
This too shall pass. That is basically the message of that game.
I think there's another game that plays around with that too, and I think maybe one that worked better for me, and it's called, I think, Brick Smash Smash. Or you could say Brick Smash Smash, but it's a breakout game where inside every brick a game of Breakout is occurring, and you're simultaneously controlling the big game of Breakout and the games of Breakout going on inside all the bricks.
That not break your brain.
And then I think there's something, I've not played it in ages, so I can't remember quite how it works, but I think when you break one, the ball comes out
Okay.
of the smaller one, and then you can decide whether you're focusing on that or not. And so sometimes you want to focus on the small game and make sure that goes well, and then at some point you realise, oh, well, actually it doesn't matter, I need to focus on the big game to make this work. I can't remember the exact way it works, but I'll put it in the show notes because it's really cool. The other Ludum Dare game I played was by my friend Liz Laura Goodhart, who worked with me on the Super Game Jam thing, and she's done another game about a four-legged snuffly animal called Aardvark, the Aardvark and the Manatee. And so it is the entire game world is on one screen at all times, and it's just a island in the middle of the ocean, and there's an aardvark on it, and a tree with some fruit that looks like pears. And at the start of the game, all the pears drop off the tree, and as the aardvark, you just walk around and snuffle them all up. And then once you've eaten them all, the sun sets, and at night time, you control a manatee who's in the sea below you, and I don't really know what's happening exactly. Well, I know how to play it, but I don't know why the things work the way they do. But there's a series of white dots in the water, and fish come up and try and eat them. And I thought at first I was trying to catch the fish and eat them to feed myself, but it seems like I can't eat them as the manatee. And all I can do, I forgot to look up whether manatees are carnivorous or not. But as a manatee, I can swim towards it and the fish swim away from me, which is why I couldn't figure out whether I could eat them or not. And I think I'm just trying to protect them, because at the end of the night, all of those little white dots go into the tree, and that grows new pairs, and the pairs drop down, and the aardvark can eat them again. So if you let the fish nibble at the white dots, then they go away eventually, and then no pair will spawn corresponding to that white dot.
So you're just trying to build like this recursive environment, or
Yeah,
not
it's-
recursive, I guess, but like
What does the
sustainable.
manatee get out of this?
Well, yeah, that's my question too, because
Maybe the manatee cares about the aardvark.
it's absolutely gorgeous. It's a really nice atmosphere, and it's really cool that there's there's two animals just helping each other basically.
Yeah.
But once I understood it, if I do understand it, I feel like this situation can only get worse. Like each night, the fishes nibble a little more of these white dots, and I can
They
try
don't
and save them all,
regenerate.
but I'll never save them all.
There's no way to like regenerate them.
I don't know. I definitely, because I didn't understand the game at first, I think I lost one. I don't think it came back. But
I don't
know
want
if the
to play this
I mean,
game
if the
because
partially
I'm
eaten
worried
ones-
about the aardvark.
To be honest, to me, it sounds like the bourgeois aardvark is living in an unsustainable dream world that is only possible because of the labour of the manatee underclass.
It's a capitalist parable.
Who don't understand why they're doing it, they just have to do it.
They have to do it because
And they
anything-
can't eat the fish. They're not
Yeah.
allowed to eat the fish
Exactly.
themselves.
sheer fear of inertia compels the manatee to engage directly with the system, but all the system is ultimately doing is screwing the manatee. Oh, the man.
Oh, God. It's best you didn't finish that.
Wow.
Anyway, you should play it because it's beautiful and it has really nice music. And it's just really nice when it like changes from like today. The sun sets gradually. And
What
It's
would
nice.
you have done with that theme, just out of interest? Because presumably it might have occurred to you like,
yeah, I didn't
well,
really.
that's a bit of a tricky one.
I didn't really give it enough thought. I sometimes do that with Ludendare because I rarely have time to actually compete. So sometimes I just write out what I would have done.
Yeah.
But I like the idea. I'd like to do something persistent. So if all you get is one screen worth of game world, then I think it should be something you can change. And I like the idea of stuff where maybe the game isn't about changing that, but as it goes on, you change that just through the course of your actions. Like there are games where I can't remember how it works, but there's a game where like everything you do creates a big splash of paint of various colours. I think we might just be bursting bubbles or something, and the bubbles are different colours. And so, depending on where you click on them and how violently they explode, you create different kind of Pollock-esque splashes of colour on the canvas, and you end up kind of making something a bit like a painting. I like that with blood. just various creatures coming in from different angles, and you have to kill them all, and where you kill them and what colour their blood is determines the canvas of carnage that you create.
I would play that.
Given more time, I might be able to think of a less bloodthirsty idea.
As an art
Pollock,
historian,
revengeance.
I endorse this. It would have made my degree a lot more kind of blood-based. Well, I suppose it was a bit, but yeah.
I kind of like to. I was thinking on that kind of like if there's one world on the screen and you have that's it and it's persistent. I'd love like Populous, but like with kind of no takebacks, where it's just like the world survives regardless of what you do, and if your like little human settlement thrives, maybe it destroys the environment and dies. You know what I mean? But regardless, the game just keeps going, and then you just sort of like accelerate through ice ages and apocalypses until like. You just sort of stop paying attention to it, I suppose. But, like, the notion that there's no... Every time you draw on the map, even if you move your cursor over the map, you're changing something. So it's like, I don't know, for God's sake, stop touching Civilization, the game, or something.
For God's sake, stop touching Civilization, the game. I like that idea. I've talked before about the Civ game I played where, like, I ended up researching the history of my own early game because I'd killed a bunch of people, and then I took up archaeology and studied the ruins of all the battles that I fought. And I'm trying to think if there's another game like that. There are lots of games where like the bodies stay there for a while, and you have to like. There's one where you have to keep killing yourself to climb on your own bodies to get out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the games where like there's true permanence. a lot of these are kind of within the game, within the match that you're playing. There's permanence and persistence. But one of the weirdest and coolest things about desert golfing, is that it's a golf game and you take a certain number of shots per hole, and there's no main menu and there's no option to start a new game, and there's no way to, literally the only way to start again is if you delete the game from your phone or tablet or whatever and reinstall it. And if you don't, then every mistake you ever make is adding to your total number of shots and is making your average worse, and it'll make your average just worse forever.
I've stayed up trying to, like, claw back my par score.
I had, like, mixed reactions to it, because at first I was like, oh shit, that means that, you know, my skill level is such that I do okay on most holes, but then if I do get stuck, I get stuck to the tune of 72 shots. It's not like 10, it's 72. And so my average is just fucking terrible, because when I get stuck, I get really, 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 really stuck. And so I was kind of upset at first, because I was like, oh, my average is going to be rubbish and I don't really deserve this. Because, you know, okay, I fucked up this hole, but I should be given a gimme at some point, and it shouldn't count against me so badly. But then I started to see it as a sort of philosophical lesson that you can never, like, truly rub out your mistakes, but all you can do is make them less and less relevant by, continuing to persevere and trying to do well.
I've tried to improve, like, because I've tried to keep it so that the score that I have, the number of strokes that I have spent, is less than 3 times what the hole is. So I'm currently on 360. That's the hole, and then I've spent 1,015 strokes.
Pretty close, but you're under.
So but now I haven't touched it in weeks, because otherwise I stay up really late, desperately I can't leave it alone. I have problems when it comes to when I'm trying to deal with mathematical averages.
Yeah, that's the sort of disturbing thing. I think the more, like, OCD you are about it, the more it bothers you.
Yeah,
because
I've tried to make it so that
you can never get rid of.
Like, I quit when the numbers are in a particular kind of relation to each other as well. I mean, obviously that's a whole new level of why are you doing this? But, like, like when they've both been multiples of a particular thing, or I know.
And that's Desert Golf, which isn't on PC.
And how did we get there? Nobody knows.
We think.
It's persistence, the mortality, perhaps. the undreamt of inevitable death of that anteater or whatever it was. Aardvark, that's the one. Whatever. Who can even tell the difference? Not me.
It's totally different to an anteater, which was Liz Law's last game.
But are they real?
I think they're real. Although I don't know actually what an aardvark ever looks like. You only ever hear of them in the context of the thing that comes first in the alphabet.
They're like little pigs, aren't they? Or they look like sort of...
This one does look like a bit like a pig, yeah.
Naked pigs, as opposed to pigs that wear clothes.
But, like, they look really naked, if I'm thinking of the right thing, which there is a chance that I might not be thinking of the right thing. I might just be thinking of nudity, I don't know.
Pigs are already like clothesless.
In what way does a pig wear clothes? This is maybe more of a tangent than
there are very hairy pigs. Those could be said to be less.
Because the pig that I was thinking of was one of the spotty pigs.
Okay.
And so in my head, like, the aardvark, therefore being slightly more pink and sort of soft looking, would therefore be naked because the other one has spotty clothes on. I don't think that helped make me look less like I don't understand what an aardvark or a pig is.
Or what clothes are.
Well, yeah. It's a good thing this is audio only, to be honest.
Good.
Anyway.
Tom,
yes.
what have you been playing?
I have mostly been playing, Far Cry 4 as always, but I've also played another jam game, but for a different jam. I forgot to look up what the hell this jam is and why it exists, but there is...
there are too many now!
There was Indies versus PewDiePie, which sounds like the Indies are going to fight PewDiePie, but I imagine what happens is they make games and then he plays them, right?
Yeah, I think it's like a him either
but does he play
related or
all of them?
sponsored or
Because
something.
that could be a tall order. Anyway, people made some games, and he played them, I guess. And one of them is called Super Wolfenstein HD, which is a sort of remake of Wolfenstein 3D,
Yeah.
which was the very first id Software, the very first Wolfenstein game by id Software, in which it was kind of 2.5D, although later on we invented something better than that we also called 2.5D, in that there was no height difference. There was just floor and ceiling were set at a constant thing, and so all there was just walls, and you were breaking out of a Nazi prison and eating roast chickens to restore your health and shooting people. It's certainly the first first-person shooter I played, and one of the first games I played, and obviously it was like revelatory because it's like, I remember we described it at the time as a game with a gun at the bottom of the screen. We didn't have a genre name for it.
Still true today, though.
Yep.
Sometimes it's kind of on the side of the screen.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
like the ones that are right in the middle because it makes it look like you've strapped a gun
that was
to your tummy
Wolfenstein,
button.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wolfenstein, they're all dead in the centre. And actually, what was it?
Doom as well.
Doom, yeah.
And Quake.
Yeah,
It took a while to get to the side gun.
Yeah.
The revelation
What
that humans
about-
don't hold things out directly in front of them.
I feel like Unicum 3D had sidedness. Certainly the RPG took up like the right
Sort of. Duke's kind of like slightly askew, but like it's not all the way to the right hand side of the screen. It is like, it's not like a modern Call of Duty or a modern shooter where like the gun is kind of like running up the right hand like vertical plane of the vision. It's like Duke is like, it's kind of like he's still holding the gun directly in front of him, but just like slightly to the side. He's still dorky.
He's kind of like keeping his arms inside the round.
Yeah, it's like his elbows are strapped
kind of
together,
thing,
but
yeah.
he's kind of bending down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
If anyone would like to make us a history of first-person shooters in which you map the position of the hands tracking closer and closer to the edge of the screen.
Like, I've always been curious about whether they accommodate for left-handedness. Like, some do, don't they?
Unreal Tournament did. I know this
Yeah.
keenly
I was
because
gonna
being
say,
a lefty,
'cause,
yeah.
Yeah.
Unreal Tournament did. Although actually it's really weird for me when that happens now. Like I'm so used to the extent that when I first fired guns in real life, it was weird to me that they were on the left. Like, like I'm used to having more vision on the left-hand side of the screen than the right-hand side, because the right-hand side is where the gun goes. It's weird. I was going to think, like, that history of shooters where you map it around, like, progress around the screen from, like, the center, you must end with the darkness, which is the only shooter I can think of where your weapons come down from above.
I don't know how much middle ground you'd have between like the very bottom right corner of the screen and the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe the logical conclusion is that they start to like bunch towards the centre again, and then you've got somebody like with two guns, one in each hand, like crossed in front of them.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm sure
Or-
that's happened.
Yeah.
Or you play a man whose face is a gun, and all you can see is gun.
Yeah. That
Anyway,
would be-
Wolfenstein.
When you play as a young alien in Alien vs Predator, you have the jaws on the top
Oh, yeah,
of
yeah.
the screen as well.
Yeah, they do that because the alien's vision is inside
Yeah,
its
is that
mouth.
true?
Well,
I don't know
Well,
enough
does it
to
have eyes
question
on the
it.
little thing?
it doesn't
that
have
comes
eyes.
out? Oh.
There are no eyes anywhere.
Oh, no.
That was the thing that
It would be a very dark game if they were to realistically model it.
yeah, that's the thing that Creative Assembly had to figure out for Isolation is like, which way does it see? Other than probably forwards.
It's more like an anglerfish, isn't it?
In what regard?
Well, anglerfishes don't, like, they're so far down in the sea that they don't, like, use their eyes. They don't, that's not a necessary thing for them to have. So they use, like, I think it's scent and motion and things like that. And the bulb thing that's in front of them is, like, that's not for them. That's obviously to, like, lure stuff in, so.
How deeply ironic. It's only the only fish with a torch and
It's
it
not
can't
like a
see.
nightlight.
It's the porch light of a murderer. Because that remind, like there was a tweet the other day which is like every single photo of an undersea fish you've ever seen blinded the fish in question because they've never really seen bright light before, so the flash on the camera will have blinded the fish. And I went through a real arc with that tweet because I was like, God, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Like all those fish, they'll never read again, and like they'll never enjoy a birthday card or appreciate the beauty of their partner or like,
Or be caught up by an anglerfish.
yeah.
They have no idea it's
Exactly.
there.
But then I was like, hang on, these fish live in the darkest place there is. So maybe it doesn't matter.
I think it's more that they wouldn't have actually developed the neural pathways that you need to process that kind of sensory input. Like, I don't... Like, I mean, I might be completely wrong because I don't actually have a marine biology qualification. I should probably make that clear if it hadn't been abundantly clear already. But, like, you know, when you don't use something or you've not got that concept of it, then, like, how would you, you know... I think that perhaps they wouldn't be blinded.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much we are making decisions on the behalf of anglerfish. I mean, to be honest, like...
Would an anglerfish please write in?
Yeah. I don't know. Like,
they can listen to this. There's no.
Indeed.
You know, there's a lot of facilities that I have that I don't use very regularly. That I'd still be annoyed if someone took away from me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but
postal
I
service.
think
Yeah,
like, you have used
like,
them
yeah,
at
like a-
points. You're not like stranded at the bottom of a I don't know. Name me a skill that you don't use very often.
The postal
the
service.
postal service.
Okay, but you're
The
not
parcel post.
stranded like a long way under a post of it. No, that doesn't work. Okay, fine. Anyway, so
The point is,
Wolfenstein.
Wolfenstein.
So you play as an anglerfish. Yeah, so there's a remake of that, and it looks like it's remarkably close visually. I mean, it's very bright, simple graphics, bright blue walls, grey floors. Only it's built with modern technology, and actually, in many ways, more modern technology than you would have in a like Call of Duty type game, such as Call of Duty. In that every attack you have, when it hits a wall, it will destroy that brick of that wall. And so everything is procedurally destructible to a very fine degree. And all of the enemies are sort of Sumatory Dreams walking ragdolls, where they are, like Sumatory Dreams, it uses physics to animate its characters. So they are unsteady on their feet and look like drunk babies. But it means that when you shoot them, they can react realistically to that, and they can fall over and try and get back up again. And you can do stuff like shoot the weapon out of their hand, and they can, when they're shooting at you, they'll try and point their arm at you to fire, but whether or not they actually succeed in that is completely down to physics and the situation they're in. So if they're aiming at you and then you shoot them in the leg, they can fall over and start shooting the wall and shoot their friend, and because all the walls are destructible, people shoot holes in everything all the time. But it's made with this kind of spirit of like, well, the original wasn't exactly high fidelity, so what? Who cares if our people are like drunk babies and fall over all the time, and everything is just like so shaky and fragile and can be broken so easily that it's hilarious to play, and also just incredibly satisfying because everything reacts so much to everything you do. Like no matter what, if you fire a gun, no matter what it hits, something cool's going to happen.
The best thing about it is the dogs. Because, like, dogs run in quite a complicated way. Like, they don't run like people walk, right? They kind of like, you know, they run, they kind of like, you know, like a pair of scissors. Like, their legs kind of like, the back legs come forward and pull them forwards, and then the front legs come down and kind of push them forward. And trying to do that procedurally in a kind of procedural animation system where everything's a ragdoll all the time would be really hard.
Yep.
So they sort of haven't bothered. And so, when you see a dog, it has 4 legs and it really wants to kill you, but the game is trying to figure out how to make that happen with the basic motive power afforded by having 4 legs kicking in the same direction. So when you see a dog, it almost immediately like falls on its face and then starts like scrabbling towards you. It's really funny. Killing the dogs is kind of heartbreaking.
Killscreen, I think Christopher Priestman at Killscreen described them as a drunken blob of teeth and dog.
Yeah.
Which is pretty accurate.
Yeah, there's I love like when you like wound somebody like in the arm and they can't get the gun to do what they want it to do anymore.
I haven't
and they
really
shoot the
noticed
floor. Yeah, it's really man, it's really funny.
I've had it where like I've shot someone and they've fallen over, and then when I'm walking over to them to hit them with the spade, as you do, that's new. I think I don't think there was a spade in Wolfenstein 3D. Their arm has got twisted behind their back such that the gun is actually pointing up at me, and when they spam the trigger, they actually shoot me like 6 times and kill me. It's actually quite nasty.
Oh.
So there's knives in it, but they're throwing knives, which again I'm pretty sure wasn't in Wolfenstein 3D. And they're all physics driven as well. They'll like ricochet off doors and knock chunks out of walls and stick in enemies. And they're also bosses. And there's one boss who has like chain guns for hands, which I think is authentic.
Yeah,
I think that was
how Hitler
Wolfenstein 3D. I don't think it's Hitler in this case, but he is incredibly tough, and throwing knives do way more damage than anything else you can do. So and you can also stockpile them. You can find loads of them in the levels. And so I was dealing with this guy by throwing knives in him. Basically, I would try and like knock him down, either throwing a knife or something else, and then once he's down, that's one of the only times you're not going to be completely shredded by his chain guns. So then I'd take that opportunity to throw loads of knives in, like all the knives I could as quickly as possible. And because he's always lying down when that happens, they tended to hit his feet, and then he'll still get back up because he doesn't die. And so by the end of the fight, he was walking around with just these 2 clusters of knives on each foot, stomping around like a sort of, it was like a weird knife bush. And eventually, I did manage to kill him, and then that means you can't pull your knives out of people unless you have the spade, in which case you have to hit their body with the spade.
That does explain why you have the spade.
Yeah, that's what it's for, to dig knives out of people. So you hit them with a spade, and then if you hit one of your knives, the knife pops back out. So it's like the best way to deal with someone really is to throw a knife at them, usually 2 if it's a person, or 1 if it's a dog. And then spade their body to get the knives back. But you can also spade someone while they're still alive to knock the knives back out of them. If you've only got 1 knife, you could throw it in, spade it back out, and throw it back in again.
Do you think that's what happened in the curious incident of the dog? I
think it's what happened in World War II.
It's also mandatory to do that to a dog and then say, "Looks like you should have been spayed."
Oh god.
Oh wow. Can we vote Chris out or off?
No.
Or like,
Because that's not how this works.
It's not a democracy.
Nope.
Oh.
If only we'd listened more closely to the parable of the aardvark and the manatee. Workers could rise up and overthrow the pan overlord.
By hitting them with spades until the knives fell out.
Yeah, I think that's how it happens.
Seems
Yeah,
legit,
it's really
yeah.
good. I really like it a lot. People should play it because it's free as well, so no real excuse not to.
Yep. I think it was made in only a couple of days. I don't know the exact time period, but it's kind of amazing. The guys must have had some kind of engine already to do that.
I kind of want them to remake every FPS.
Yeah.
Like, I want, like, wobbly fall down people Doom, and I want wobbly fall down people Quake. I want wobbly fall down people Bioshock.
Bioshock could be awesome. Imagine the Andrew Ryan moment.
Yeah, God.
Tries to swing his golf club and just kind of falls over and hits himself in the face.
Try to get the golf club back out of him with a spade. Oh dear. Yeah, I want to play Gone Home in that engine.
There's no people in it.
It's fine. I don't want to fall over a lot in that house. I want to play, like Deus Ex with that would be fucking amazing. Just like tripping people over.
Or Hitman Blood Money with the Mardi Gras scene. 3,000 people all wobbling and falling over each other.
I'm now imagining Viva Pinata with that going on, but I think that would just be pinatas, so...
It is a sort of knife pinata game.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah, ammo falls out of Nazis, you hit them with a spade.
And then you get some bonus knives back.
It's a tradition of sorts.
A good game.
What have you been playing, Chris?
I've been playing the Talos Principle,
Oh, yeah.
which is out today, I believe, when we're recording this, and so, yeah, it'll be available by the time you listen to this. Which I really like. So the Talos Principle is, and I know Pip has reviewed it as well. Mm-hmm. So we've both reviewed it for different rival PC gaming websites. So like,
We have.
review fight. Although I think we both
But you
liked
didn't
it.
give it a score, I guess, Pip.
I gave it the spirit... No, I didn't.
Could you tell us what the score would have been had you been writing a review for PC Gamer?
Oh. I'm not sure. I think I would have given it somewhere in the 80s.
That's what I did.
Oh.
So,
I always ask Graham that, and I must annoy him, because he doesn't have to give a score for RPS, but I'm like, no, but what would you give it?
help me out here. I need to think in numbers.
I love numbers. You know how I feel about numbers.
To explain what it is, the Talos Principle is a first-person puzzle game. Well, actually, it's first or third person. You can play it in third person. By Crow Team, who are the guys that made Serious Sam, like the various Serious Sam games. And it's written by Tom Jubert, who wrote a bunch of stuff for FTL, I believe, among other things.
And also Jonas, I can't pronounce his second name.
Yeah, Chris, I actually can't either.
Jonas, I'm so sorry. And that's probably not even how you pronounce your first name. It's probably Jonas or something. And
It's
I'm
not
just
even how
a
you say
terrible person. Yeah.
So, yeah. We're not even going to attempt the surname, but But anyway, so it's a first person puzzle game in the, like, Portal or Quantum Conundrum mold, by which I mean you solve puzzles while a voice that's probably an AI talks to you. Which, at first, can feel very familiar. And the other thing I think stands out about it, and the kind of puzzles you're solving, it's all, basically using a series of logic-based devices to unlock arenas in a way that gives you access to what's called a sigil in the game, but is a Tetris piece to anybody who has ever played a game. And then you assemble like a collection of Tetris pieces to create a square, and the square is your key to unlock new gadgets, levels, etc. And that's the structure of the game in pure terms. And initially I wasn't cold on it necessarily, but like obviously the setup is very familiar in terms of, hey, you know, why are you in this labyrinth full of puzzles, and who's that guy talking to you? And also the actual devices for the puzzles are pretty familiar things, like, I mean, not just the obvious ones, like blocks that you put on stuff, like that's not a new idea, but like redirectable lasers, which are pretty much directly from Portal 2, or in both in terms of like coming out of an energy emitter on the wall and needing to be directed into an energy receiver on a different wall. Like being able to record and play back your own actions as like a co-op duplicate of yourself, which comes from basically PB Winterbottom, Braid, and the Thinking with Time Machine mod for Portal again. There's which are the other ones? There's a sorry, Pip?
Oh no, I was going to say there's you get they call them what is it, a hexahedron? It's a cube, and you can use that to put on like pressure plates and stuff like that. And then there's also like the last thing that you get is a persistent kind of plate platform that you can use in conjunction with the time recording device, and it will still exist and be interactable with in a way that time recording doesn't usually.
So
it allows you to walk around on your own head.
Yeah, essentially, you carry it over like, your head, and you can jump onto it as your other self.
Or like so. I mean, and there's also the jammer, which is the first one you get.
Yeah, of course.
Which just switches off any device in the level. So devices include, and the fan as well as the other one. So the jammer, like it's basically so the jammer.
It's hot when it's solving puzzles.
The jammer points at any device which could be like laser gates you can't get through, turrets, various forms of like mobile AI, they're not AI enemies, because like patrolling enemies that you need to disable, like proximity mines and things like that.
Sentry guns. And
the jammer switches them off, and that's the first thing it teaches you to use. So like one of the first tricks you learn is how to get like 2 jammers through one gate without leaving one behind, is to like point the jammer at the gate from one angle, then move the other jammer through and point it back at the gate from the other angle, then go through and get the other jammer. So like lots of like stuff. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
And then, but the thing is that individually all of those mechanics are like either very simple or familiar in some way. But it's when their combination comes together, and this requires excellent puzzle design, and it has loads of excellent puzzle design. And there's loads of really cool things you like that eventually when you figure them out, that you just feel amazing. Like, you know, Pip mentioned the platform that you can hold that allows you to stack something on your own head by recording yourself holding it. And initially that's just like giving yourself a lift from one place to another. But later you, like, there's stuff you realize that, like, so if you create a paradox by, like, if you create a paradox while recording your own actions, it duplicates the object that caused the paradox. So for example, for example, right, let's say you, record yourself jumping on top of a block and holding a platform in the air. If you then, you're playing back your own actions where you run alongside it. If you then run and pick up that block, your duplicate then jumps onto a kind of holographic version of the block, because it still has to be there for the action to make sense. So you create a paradox, but then it kind of resolves itself. So like the later puzzles kind of hinge on figuring out like how to act out the first half of a paradox with the correct timing for you to then allow you to create the other half of the paradox with your other self.
That's where the PB Winterbottom stuff really kicked in for me, because obviously with that, you're often enacting what the clone would do on a different level in the game, so that when you finally activate the switch and put it up there, it will loop in the correct action sequence and stuff like that.
But that's just really gratifying. So at a basic level, it succeeds because the puzzles become really clever in a way that's just, they're fun to solve. And there's, I think the thing that helps with that maybe goes unsaid a bit is that the difficulty level is really well set in that, for the vast majority of the game, the pieces you collect are color coded to correspond to different things. So green pieces correspond to new areas, like progressing in the game in a kind of really tangible way. Yellow pieces correspond to new items that you'll need to solve puzzles. So unlocking the fan, for example, which propels things from one area to another or whatever. And red pieces unlock levels in a fourth secret, well, not secret area, but like optional area thing-ish sort of deal, which I'll explain in a second. And the red puzzles are the hard ones. And they also correspond kind of neatly with the difficulty scale. So like most of the green puzzles, like you can do in 30 seconds. You just look at the environment and go, oh, it's this, 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 and this. I move this here, switch this around, stand on this, do that. And that's satisfying because you feel smart for just breezing it. And then the yellow ones are like, you stop slightly, you think about it, and then you feel smart for solving it efficiently. And then the red ones are like the beat your head against it for half an hour, switch off the game, come back and realize you're being an idiot kind of thing that are really satisfying. And because they scale really neatly with how optional they are, at least at first, that's creates quite a satisfying pattern. Like you go into a world, and in a given world there'll be puzzles of every type, but you almost have a shopping list of Tetris bricks at the top of the screen, and you know which ones you want, so it's really easy to tell when something isn't necessary immediately for you to do in order to progress. But the temptation is obviously to try and max everything out.
I played a game at EGX that I guess maybe isn't out yet. It was in the Left Field collection, and it was called maybe something like Incursion, or a word that actually more related to logic that sounded like
Recursion?
Concursion.
Maybe. I don't know.
No, I think that is an actual game.
Excursion?
So I'll describe the
don't
game
know
and
if
you'll know. You are a cube, and you can kind of tumble around, and then it's got the rewinding and cooperating with your past self mechanic. And so you do stuff like place yourself between a gap so that you can walk over your own head. And it's really neat and well presented, and feels good to play. And the puzzles are good. The difficulty curve is pretty much about right. But it's a mechanic I'd already seen before, so it wasn't like that wasn't blowing my mind in itself. It was like it used a little bit more advanced than some other places I've seen it. But then I got to the point that I often do with these kinds of games where I solved a really quite long and difficult level, and I was satisfied with it, and I was thinking, yes, I like that. And then I got to the next one, and I was like, oh, fuck this. Like, this is just, it's basically the same thing, but it's much longer and much more fiddly, and it's going to require a lot of, like, particularly when you're cooperating with your past self, it involves timing. You have to make sure you wait in that location for exactly 6.5 seconds and then move on, because you need to get yourself to another location to help yourself in a different way. And then when you're playing it back, the more time you've left yourself, the easier it is, but also the harder it is to get to the next bit.
With
on
this
time.
one, there isn't that sort of same sort of precision required, pretty much. Like, a few things require you to move carefully or to time things to a certain extent, but there's nothing that I found that was, it has to be this amount of seconds, or you have to do, this particular, like it was slightly more forgiving, or slightly more, and the other thing is, you were saying about sort of, maybe even the levels being big in a way that was just like, this is, they're very compact and very neat, I found.
Even when they're hard, they're not huge.
They're very much contained within sort of a certain size parameter, and they very rarely use more than 3 of the tools that you have in your toolkit at any one time. Like, they flash up at the beginning, like which ones you'll need to solve the thing.
Yeah. And like, so, towards the end of the game, it still says like, this is just bricks, this one is just blocks, like, don't even, and that's how variety is created. The other thing is that, like, the thing it doesn't do is there's very little fat in levels. Like, there are very few walls or obstacles that are there for no reason.
Right.
So you can pass, if something's been put there, it's a clue. And also, like, there's like only maybe one occasion I could think of where I couldn't solve a puzzle, but the answer was simply I hadn't found an extra jammer. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was trying to solve something with 2 jammers that seemed impossibly hard. But actually the answer was there was a 3rd jammer in the level, I just hadn't found it. That happened once, but normally, like, the first thing you do is you run to the level and you just gather up all the tools, and then you're
Yeah.
like, right, how do I solve this?
And they're basically in a pile in front of you at the beginning of the level, and you're like, right!
The amazing thing, and it's basically, it could almost be written off as like an annoying feature or inconvenient, but the way the self-recording system works is you go up to a terminal that's like the recording terminal, and you use it, and then you're in recording mode, and your color grading changes, so you know what you're doing is recording the kind of past version of yourself. And then it records everything you do until you return to the terminal and click it again. So your past self always goes to and from the terminal.
Yeah.
But what that means is when you're experimenting, there's no way of cancelling that system.
Right.
So, you know, if you record some actions, you fuck it up, you wander about, you do some dumb things, you get it wrong. In order to cancel out and go back to the real world, you still have to go back to the terminal and watch yourself do all of that. So a part of the experience of fucking up those puzzles is watching yourself be a moron. Just watching this like glowing blue test dummy version of yourself walk around looking at things and picking things up and dropping them.
You can stop that.
Oh, really?
Because I was like, no, I need to deal with this embarrassment. And so if you go up to it while it's in the middle of playback and just hit record again and then instantly play, then it'll just have it'll stop that initial recording and it will just have you standing in front of the terminal for half a second. And I'm like, yeah, that's alright. No one's
Looking
Yeah,
inside.
but I did enjoy it. Like one of them was like just myself with a like holding a plate above my head, just running around, like obviously not sure where to stand, and then not standing in the correct place for long enough. So then the real me, but you know what I mean, the present me, trying to jump onto my own head and missing.
So you do that like experimental thing as you go, because I do that thing where I do a circuit and then I stop and then I think like, okay, how do I do this? And then like, so I'll only sort of start doing that stuff when I think I have an idea or when I think I like have a
So you
plan.
don't record until you know.
No, I think it's because like I wait for the pieces to snap into place in a maybe
Yeah, I
in
know
a
what you
different
mean.
way than
No, I
you
do know what you mean. There's
necessarily
a
do,
like I came back to the office today and my friend Matt from Edge was reviewing it, playing on a big screen, and he was stumped on a puzzle that had stumped me as well, but I'd solved, and like seeing the difference between like a brain that has figured this out and a brain that is still figuring it out, like that is the distance you travel in puzzle games. That's what's interesting about them, is like your brain is forever different now because you understand the geometry of this thing.
So there's a thing that I was considering, and it's a thing that I would actually like to stream or record because I'd like to be able to watch it back and sort of see. I don't know the process of puzzle solving, but with that kind of thing, like I always feel that broadcasting it is obviously like it's spoiler after spoiler after spoiler. It's not like you're introducing someone to a game, you're actively playing it on their behalf.
Yeah.
And so like I kind of and obviously I was reviewing it, so I couldn't do it. Like I was like, it was under embargo, so it's not like I could.
You can record it for yourself and just
That's true.
watch it back. Thing about like watching yourself be stupid, or like actions that sometimes seem sillier from an external perspective, came up when Graham and I were playing Far Cry 4, because most of the time we do pretty well, and it's kind of just easier in co-op. You can just, whatever was semi-difficult in single player is much easier in co-op. But we would breaking into Nor's Fortress, which is my favourite place in the game, and it's this spectacular. It's like a fortress outside, but it's in a cliffside, and inside there's a cave, and you can come at the cave from above by going through a rocky opening and lowering yourself down your climbing rope, and you lower yourself down through these amazing like big red ribbons. So it's really like visually spectacular, and there's guards patrolling beneath. And what you're meant to do is swing from your climbing rope until you have enough momentum to launch yourself to one of the ledges on the side, and then you drop down to the ledge, and then from there you can kind of plan your assault and drop down to other ledges and balconies and stuff. And I've done this loads of times because I've fucked it up a lot of times. And so this time I lowered myself down first, and then Graham was coming down after me. I accidentally latched onto a zip line and shot across the balconies accidentally, and ended up going way further than I meant to, but I didn't get detected. And then Graham, I wasn't looking at him, but his icon is on my screen, like it just points to where he is, and so it's pointing up high because he was above me, coming down afterwards. And then suddenly he went really down low, and then he turned into a skull. I looked around and I just found his body just lying in the courtyard in front of all the guards, and there's 2 alarms there and like a campfire and a bunch of other guards. And I've done that several times. I've dropped to my death without meaning to. And from first person, it's kind of like, it just plays this kind of dong chord, and the review goes red, and it fades to black. It's not that funny. It's kind of annoying, but from an external perspective, it's fucking hilarious. It's too much, like, from the guard's perspective, they just saw his body just come out of nowhere, just slam down to the ground, and he's dead.
You need guard
what
cam.
the fuck? And that's, in co-op, one of you is RJ, the hero of the game, and the other one's just this guy called Herc, who's not relevant, really. And I was
Poor old
Herc.
irrelevant Herc.
I was Herc, and he was RJ, because I joined his game,
Yeah.
and so RJ, the supposed saviour of the whole land, just like the way he died was one day guards just saw him fall out of the sky and smack into the concrete. Just no words, no comment.
Oh dear. Proper face plant.
So
No, I was just going to say, the bits that we've talked about Talos Principle are, I would recommend the game on those alone.
That's what I was going to say.
But I was going to say, like, there's this whole other side of things going on, so did you want to...
Well, the last thing I was going to say about the game part of the game is that, so one interesting thing about Talos Principle is it's about 10 to 15 hours long, I think, charitably.
I think I've spent about, well, this would include sort of glaring at it while just having the thing open, but having a cup of tea and
anytime when you're
sit-down.
not alt-tabbed.
But yeah, like I think I've probably spent about maybe 12, 13, 14 hours on it.
I'd say 10 to 15 based on how stuck you get.
I've completed the game and got all the pieces, but I haven't got all the bonus extras and all that kind of stuff.
So it's you could describe it as a full-length game by the standards of most single-player games this side of RPGs, basically. So, or strategy games. So, like, by the standards of a shooter campaign, basically by the standards of any other first-person game, it is a full-length game. But I think unusually for a game of this type, it's being sold at full price, which 30 quid on PC, which I've heard people complain about, and I kind of get it because I think we are in a position where games are generally cheaper anyway now than £30 for a new game. But I think there's also a trend towards devaluing puzzle games for some reason. The notion that puzzle games are more disposable than a COD campaign or something, even though it's the same length, and I would argue more entertaining.
The thing I would say on that front is that I did actually put a little bit about that at the end of the review, because I know at least one person who has very much balked at the price. And that's that in the comments, people were pointing out that in different iterations of Steam, different locations, it was actually coming up as a lot cheaper. So even though the version that is advertised on their website, on the Crow Team website, is the $29.99 full price version, or with the pre-release discount or whatever it is, there were people sort of saying, no, I pre-ordered it for like €17.99 or so. It was something like that.
It's weird.
So,
it's like $40 as well, which is less than £30. So it's
so it feels like the pricing is a bit all over the place, but if you go for the UK Steam pricing, I would recommend it, but it will feel
This is
steep.
the thing, like, I don't want to get necessarily distracted into like the philosophy of game prices, but like, it's an interesting case where it's like, I think for a bunch of people, because of the cost, it will be put in a kind of like wait for a Steam sale bracket. And I think it's a worthy game, but I think if you would also consider spending £30 for a 12-hour campaign in any other context, you should consider it here. And I think that's probably that's the notion that a collection of puzzles, which I would argue is harder to make good consistently than a 12-hour shooter campaign, because a shooter, I mean, honestly, or to put it a different way,
or with the
FPS,
level of precision that Crow Team have got with this.
FPS designers should push themselves to offer as varied a challenge as a puzzle that a game designer manages to achieve with like 5 game elements.
Yeah.
Like, the reason Half-Life 2 is like one of the greatest, if not the greatest, shooter campaign ever made is because it remixes elements constantly, and every, like how the Talos Principle gives you a new tool and then remixes it in a dozen different ways. That's what Half-Life 2 does. And the reason Half-Life 2 is a good game is because its structure is functionally kind of a puzzle game, where it's like Ravenholm. Okay, this bit is gravity gun and saw blades. Like, and then you get the shotgun and it changes or you get ammo for it. Like,
isn't it crazy that you didn't get the shotgun before that point? Just thinking back to that.
Do you get the
You're right, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
I am right,
Gregori
sorry.
gives it to you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of
and
course it is.
It's just so mad that it comes so late.
But that's the thing, right? Like, like, that's why Half-Life 2 is brilliant. And so, like, that was just a bit of an aside, but it's kind of to counter the notion that the game isn't worth 30 quid, because what you do is arrange, lasers. and stack boxes rather than shoot men and befriend Kevin Spacey.
But the other thing that's going on while you're playing all of this is that there are a bunch of library terminals scattered, like, you know, there's one in each zone, and then they sort of beep and let you know that there's stuff there for you to explore, and they provide like a sort of a wealth of slightly corrupted text snippets from a whole different variety of media. So you'll find like blog entries and scraps of emails and, you know, poetry and, you know, bits from old sort of Egyptian mythology and things like that. And that all sort of feeds into something else which is happening as the puzzles take place, or as you progress through those worlds and unlock more and more, which is, and it sort of feeds into this the disembodied voice of this narrator guy, because there's always a god kind of aspect to a sort of disembodied voice that's telling you what to do and sort of ordering you around. But this sort of starts to dig into existentialism and the idea of sort of AI and what the function of that is and the nature of humanity. And tonally, and this will not be a surprise because Tom was one of the writers on this, but it's very similar. It reminds me of The Swapper. But also it has a lot in common with Jonas's previous game, which is I think it's The Infinite Ocean, which sort of covers similar kind of ground. You can find that on Armour Games, and so you've sort of got a lot of that going on in the background, and it's not light. It doesn't offer you light relief in the way that you'll get from Portal, from GLaDOS, from, you know, those kind of sort of subversive, but in a kind of gleeful, sort of light, or, you know, light-hearted way. It's very sort of, for me it worked, and it's partly because I'm very interested in those topics, and I think that the game handled them sort of interestingly, and the text was engaging, but also because I found that the puzzles put me in the right mindset to absorb them, because I was sort of zenned out, but I know that a few people would be...
This is what is really interesting about it, because its appearance of looking like Portal or like Quantum Conundrum would be the other point of comparison. Games that also have omniscient narrators. In the case of Quantum Conundrum, it's literally Q from Star Trek. So, is that it's actually not like them at all. And the reason it's not like them at all is because in those games, what you're being told, or asked to read, so I'm about to sneeze. Okay, so, if there was a weird gap in the podcast just then, it's because I sneezed. And,
I forgot to edit it out.
And we've all got to live with that now. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So, like, in the case of most puzzle games, narrative, or story, or writing, or voice acting of any kind, or songs, are there to give you a break from solving puzzles for a bit. Like, the idea is you've solved your puzzle, you get to hear GLaDOS be funny again, and it's kind of your reward. And likewise, that goes hand in hand with the notion that the voice is there to subvert the puzzle-solving process a bit. Like, it's GLaDOS saying that you're kind of an idiot for going along with this. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the concept of the puzzle-solving chamber is explicitly stupid at that point. Like, the challenge you've entered into is, and this is going to get mega arch, so bear with me, a Kafka-esque one, right? Like, Portal is basically the trial, right? You're in this pointless network of stupid foibles and rules and counter rules, and what it's there to illustrate, above anything else, is like the futility of the human condition faced with a kind of man-created bureaucracy that doesn't make any sense, right? That's Portal. Like, it is a response to a kind of, like, I don't know, like the godlessness of just shit happening to you, basically. Whereas the Talos principle, the stuff you're told, not only the stuff that Elohim, literally God, tells you, the booming voice in the sky, but also the things that the terminals tell you, and the way you... subsequently, this evolves into a kind of dialogue tree with the terminals themselves, that threads through personality quizzes into dialogue with a voice in the terminals. And there's an obvious Garden of Eden metaphor here, but the game...
I was going to say it's very much a kind of God versus serpent.
But it also it branches beyond the Garden of Eden. It accepts that the Garden of Eden wasn't the first time humanity told that story about itself. Like the Talos principle itself is a classical thing, a classical Greek thing, and it goes in that direction as well. And so for that reason, the text stuff is another form of puzzle. The stuff you're being told, the information you're being given, is another thing you're being asked to arrange into some kind of sense. And for that reason, it requires active engagement and a really different kind of engagement. And as far as I can tell, a deliberate contrast is created between the logical nature of the puzzles that Elohim has designed for you, where there is absolute truth, because there is like a correct order for you to put these lasers in, and the kinds of things that come up through the terminals, which are all about textual analysis and, and uncertainty and the natural doubt that comes with language, particularly, and any kind of imperfect vector for meaning.
And the sometimes sort of not exactly incomprehensible but non-logical responses you get from human beings, or from
the personhood.
Yeah,
well, a lot of it's about what personhood means, and personhood involves a certain amount of irrationality. Like, the game's great kind of interesting paradox is you could define a person as a rational being, and you solve rational puzzles, but actual personhood exists somewhere beyond rationale, and that's like way more sophisticated material than a game like this normally tackles. And the point is that it uses puzzle solving as part of its argument. It's not like puzzle solving is this kind of like pointless absurdity that's fun but placed in front of you to be usurped by a comedic kind of foil. It's explicitly part of the process of the game expressing what it's about.
At one point, I think it's quite early on, but there's a piece of text that I think suggests, or there's something that suggests that puzzle solving is humanity's natural state.
Yeah, it's actually a voice log.
Oh yeah, no, it's one of.
It's quite encouraging because I remember playing Cube. Cube with a Q. And it's very Portal-esque, and it's first-person puzzler, and all of the puzzles, the difficulty curve was judged just right for me. It was always challenging, but never too taxing that I got frustrated with it. But there was nothing to it except the puzzle. It was just puzzle. No breaks, no narrative to follow. There might have been a story, but I didn't notice if there was. And I just got puzzle fatigue, and I eventually stopped playing it. And it made me realise that, like, in terms of this versus Portal, I mean, it was more mind-bending anyway, because it was, like, literally bending space. But it made me realise the reason I was playing Portal wasn't really for the puzzles. It was kind of at least 50% for the humour and the story, and just to, like, get to the end of the actual, the GLaDOS thing. And the end of it is uniquely satisfying. It's like one of the best endings of any game, I've played. And partly because as they add tension elements to the puzzles, you're solving puzzles with portals, but then now there's a time limit. They are also bringing it to a narrative conclusion, and also the jokes, which are kind of like one of the biggest things drawing me into it, are probably getting better than they've ever been in the whole series. That the stuff GLaDOS is saying about like the machine that made shoes for orphans during that period is just so good. And because you're kind of stressed, for some reason that makes it funnier. And so like the humour and the puzzle solving is all coming together to this like perfect crescendo, and then when it all resolves, you get the song and everything. And that was just like a perfect end. And it made me realise like I don't care about completing Cube because I know I'm not going to get that. I suppose I don't know for sure, but I don't think I'm going to get that. I don't think it's suddenly going to start telling me jokes and having an amazing ending. Yeah.
That's the thing is, I this is not to take away from Portal. Like, I genuinely think Portal's amazing, and but the thing is, I don't think anyone's going to beat Portal at doing what Portal did, which is telling that, using puzzles in a particular way with relation to narrative and comedy. To create a particular experience, because it's really impossible to do that again without repeating it. And you can't really get any more on point than like GLaDOS calling you fat. All the way, you know what I mean? Like, because it's so arbitrary and pointless. And like, the whole thing is about like how arbitrary and pointless everything is, but it's still kind of fun. Like, one of my early criticisms of the Talos Principle that I've kind of backed off from since was that it suffers a bit because its basic puzzle solving mechanics aren't fun in and of themselves. Like, it is not fun to use any of its individual mechanics. It's fun to succeed with them. Whereas I'd argue that portals are fun anyway. Yeah. Like, portals are just fun. Like,
the active motion in Portal is wonderful.
Yeah. Like, just the magic trick of going through one place and coming out a different place. Like, whereas pointing a jammer at something, like, it's like switching off elements level, stacking boxes. None of these things are individually interesting. Whereas I think that's actually appropriate to Talos Principle, because Talos Principle is explicitly about creating order with, like, fixed rational elements, whereas Portal is like 50% about the kind of rigid nature of the tasks you're being asked to perform and how absurd that is, and 50% about, like, Chell's, like, sort of, like, manic, childish, psychopathic kind of creativity within that system, completely breaking it. And therefore having that angle on, like, the way you know what I mean? Like, if you just play with portals for a bit and loop around the level being weird, it completely fits with who GLaDOS thinks Chell is. Like, you know, like, it works with the game, whereas in Talos Principle, the tension is slightly different between you and the creator of the puzzles. And, yeah. But the main thing to take away from it is, I think that, A, it's really well written. Like, it takes, I think, quite a lot of writing skill to produce that comprehensive, not to curate material on that scale. Because obviously it uses a lot of literature. There's Shakespeare in there, there's Milton, there's
I think it's like Samuel Johnson.
The Samuel Johnson's in there as well.
Yeah.
But also to write realistic feeling IRC logs and emails and stuff that doesn't look wrong. Like, all of it sounds right, and that takes a lot of skill.
And the audio logs as well, those are...
Really good, yeah. The other thing is that, however, despite that, it's quite heavy going.
Yes.
And, like, it means that you never really get a break from it.
I would also say that the hint system is... Oh, the hint system. I'm going to speak up. The hint system is just willfully, like, you have to go through so much to get a single hint, and the hint will just be a sentence that sort of clues you, because at first...
What do you have to do to get the hint?
So, what you need to do is you need to,
Prove that you're stuck.
Do you think this is a spoiler?
Not really. It's, actually, I would say that it is, because when I find...
Okay,
so you have to open a hidden area that requires...
You have to have got a certain amount of the way through the game already, and then it's a case of then having to complete even more tasks to even get to the point where you are offered this hint. And because of, I think basically the amount, this should possibly illustrate the amount of effort you have to go to, but I was expecting, when I activated one of them out of curiosity, I was expecting, like, to see a version of myself completing a level.
That's exactly what I thought would happen.
And it isn't, it's just a hint. It's a text hint.
Yeah. Like,
and I was just like, are you kidding me? For all of that effort, and someone who is completely stuck will get this sentence.
Everything about how the hint system is set up suggests that's what's going to happen. Where it reacts, like, and that sounds frustratingly vague, so we should probably move on.
Maybe they wanted to do that and it was just too difficult or something. Like,
yeah, maybe, because, like, so, like, basically, like, because it ties into a conceit in the fiction, which is, actually we can describe because it's not a spoiler, which is that, as you travel around, you see QR codes on the walls, and when you see when you look at the QR codes, you get messages from, other people doing the same puzzles you're doing.
Oh, in case you're freaking out that you'll need a QR code reader, the game does that for you.
Basically,
that's
like,
the conceit.
things that aren't a spoiler, you're probably a machine. Like, when you see your own arms, you're a robot.
Oh, well, if you switch to third-person view, you are a robot.
Yeah, so, like, but you see QR codes, and the QR codes are messages from other
travellers in the land.
And you sort of recognise names, and people leave, it's sort of like Dark Souls-style messages about the kinds of things they're experiencing, and a lot of the kind of, like, there's a lot of the game's kind of like self-reflecting humour kind of comes from, like, people going like, honestly, I just think this is a big bullshit list of puzzles with philosophy attached to it. Like, having that within the game really helps, like, kind of...
It helps make you not think that.
Yeah, but, like, and that ties into what the hint system ends up being, because, like, the hint system involves you initially painting a QR code onto the wall, asking for help, and waiting for a message to appear. But the way you actually unlock that, which involves, like, a eureka moment involving a random thing you find, means that you expect more help than you get, because the help you get is
presumably,
like...
this is optional, right? If you don't...
Yeah, totally optional, yeah.
Yeah. It's more that, like, there are some puzzles where, you know, I think people would be bashing their heads against them for ages, and if you just don't get the slight sort of reorientation of thinking right that you need...
Honestly, I had one that... So this is a testament to how dumb I am. But I had one where I couldn't solve it at all, and I got a clue.
Yeah.
And the clue was jam the fan. And I thought that was, like, figurative. I'd forgotten that there was... I'd forgotten that there was an item in the game called a jammer.
Oh my god.
And this was me in a lunch break, like just like fuck. And like so I tried throwing items in front of the fan, I tried throwing things at the fan, I tried like using another fan to catapult things into the fan. I did everything. And then the next day I came back to it and I hadn't even looked at the clue again. I just went, oh yeah, the jammer exists. And this is
jammer to jam the fan.
This is exactly what I did with Portal all the time in Portal 2 when they added loads of more mechanics.
Oh, you forget you have the portal.
Yeah, and it's like, how the shit? Oh, I can fire sludge.
How did I get all the way up there? That's spatially very far away, and yet all I have is these walls that I can put portals in.
But I'm really enjoying. But I hope I'm not stuck because I'm really enjoying Slime and Bricks 2. Like, yeah, but yeah, it's really good. Like, it is heavy going and. Someone I was speaking to today described it as pretentious, and I hate that word generally, but like, I think what it is ambitious, and it warrants further analysis. Like, it is a really rare example of a game fully taking on, like, issues of agency and philosophy with regards to game playing and how you tell a story using that.
Yeah. And I really like that about
it's
it.
not
And I think
about.
some people will bounce off it so hard. And that's why I was kind of like, actually you can enjoy the puzzle section without engaging with that other stuff. I think you should. I think you should try it.
That's why I brought it up first.
You really should. Well, that's the thing in my review. I was like, right, we're going to talk about the puzzles first because, like, the puzzles are so rock solid that you can enjoy it regardless of what you think of the sort of the philosophical side of things. And so, yeah, like, some bits of the philosophy didn't quite work for me, and I don't know whether that's because I have spent an inordinate amount of time thinking about some of the things, the questions that the game asks, and having come up with ideas that I'm satisfied with or that hold true, you know, in the face of the questioning that the game provides. Having the game then tell me, yeah, but that's not logical, and I'm like, no, I actually have figured this one out. No, that's not. And,
I solved this one.
But the options it gave me, I was like, yeah, but
this is kind of related. In Portal 2, they have. It's just a throwaway joke, and I shouldn't be a jerk about it because it's just a throwaway joke. But there's a list of paradoxes on the wall at some point that says, "Oh, if you ever find yourself like a robot's attacking you, here are the 3 paradoxes you can tell." And 2 of them are not fucking paradoxes. They're solvable. I can tell you what the answers are. And it's just like, come on, you're nerds. You programmed a whole game. You know this shit.
I think there was one point where it was about 11:30 at night, and I'd been playing this thing for about 5 hours at that point, and it asked me a question about consciousness and the soul or something, and I was kind of sat there going, no, I figured this out, I want to tell you what I think about this. And then, like, there were like 4 options, and I was
never
like,
tell you.
can I just write a letter? Like, maybe I should just write a letter to you people. But yeah, and there's, yeah.
I'm not just a puzzle-solving robot solving puzzles. Yeah, the other thing I want to talk about briefly, to wrap up discussion Talos Principle, is I think you and I, Pip, have opposite takes on the art.
This is a thing that I want to talk to you about, though, because you still haven't completed it, have you?
No.
Hurry up!
Okay. Fine.
At the end, there's just the Mona Lisa.
But
so you can't criticise.
But unrelated to that, even sort of when I was where you are with the game, or even when I first started it. So, okay, you say what you think about the art, because I think that's fair.
So,
it's just that
it's a Crow Team game, and there's a bunch of weird shit that it does. So, like, it is a game curiously without artistic direction. But, like, well, obviously, like, creative decisions have been made in terms of, like, what environments presented. Greek ruins, Egyptian ruins, other ruins. And the industrial design of the tools you're given, which is deliberately discordant with that. However, it's also a game that allows you to pick between first and third person. It's a game that allows you to color grade it using a completely customizable, like, Instagram-style filter menu.
Wow.
If you want it sepia, you can have it sepia. If you want it black and white, it can be black and white.
Super vibrant.
You can have it super vibrant or muted, like...
Weirdly, those were many of those were options in Unreal Tournament 3. They were as vibrant and muted.
Yeah,
and...
but you normally associate those kinds of options with games that don't have something to say, right? It's like
Unreal Tournament 3 does not have anything to say.
Serious Sam is about shooting the monsters, right? Like, they don't really give a fuck if you do it in sepia, right? Whereas, like, a game with this much to say, you'd assume they would have some, like, direction over how it looks for you, right? Like, we intend the game to look muted and pastel, or we intend the game to look black and white, right? Like, it gives you that power. The other thing is, the assets are all like mega detailed. It's good looking in that everything is sort of like looks photo referenced and kind of nice, but it doesn't have a personality. Like, there's nothing is expressed by it. And like, I use this line in my review, so I'm just going to repeat this up, but like, it looks like those graphics card benchmarking demos you got on graphics cards in the 90s. You know, where like the camera would just pass, like when the camera would pan around like a reflective sphere in an Egyptian ruin.
Yeah.
Like, that exact thing, that's the Talos Principle. It looks like that. And like, and then so I was initially like, you know, like Portal has a really specific look. Like, you know, I met the guy who, we met the guy who like recorded all the individual like articulation sounds for every panel in Portal 2 that shifts and slides around the environment. Like, it's an example of like vast investment in the intricate detail of the setting and how important it is that it looks right. And whereas Talos Principle, like, they are explicitly interchangeable tile sets, a point that's made clear to you when they start to flip out. Like, midway
start glitching out.
Yeah, midway through the game. Like, you know, it comes with the level editor. Like, you know, it's designed to be kind of modular. It's also designed to be machine created. So, like, it feels a bit cold, I think. Like, I know you read it as relaxing, and I kind of buy that because I find it relaxing as well.
I think it's also that's a personal thing. Like, I think that it has something to say, and I will come back to that at a later date once you've finished it. But I think that just aside from all of that, I have very sort of gut responses. I know we talked about this last time I was on the podcast, was a gut response to art, but in this particular scenario, I think that blankness and that blandness is something that that in the right way I can find incredibly restful and incredibly soothing. And so combine it with the music. I love the
music's
music.
great.
It was amazing. Like, there's a sort of a kind of motif that plays when you're in the areas where you're unlocking hints, actually. And I didn't want to leave that world. It wasn't that it was like objectively beautiful, but I found a piece there that I wasn't expecting, and I didn't want to leave. And that was an interesting thing, and especially because one of the themes of the game is to do with defiance versus obedience, I would say, because of the, you know, I don't think that's a spoiler because it's the setup from the moment that you have an overarching narrator telling you what to do.
The Stanley Principle.
Well, this is the thing, like I mentioned the Stanley Parable because it's about whether you sort of defy or obey the narrator, basically, but in very different ways. And so something that I found was a conflict early on and that kind of continued was that because I liked being in the world, my instinct was to obey. But the way video games work, that's not, you know, like that's not how you play the game. And the fact that it's offering you all of these red puzzle pieces to unlock a thing that it keeps telling you not to go anywhere near, I was kind of like, I would actually stay here, you know, like.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of, like, what could be at the end of the Talos Principle that Pip thinks the art style is justified and Chris doesn't? And I thought, maybe it just gives you a benchmark score. Like, oh,
your
that makes
3D
sense
mark
then.
is
3,964.
But what I was going to say is that, like, so normally, if a game didn't have a discernible art style or didn't communicate something with its art style, I would say these people tried to communicate something and didn't pull it off. Whereas the Talos Principle is clever enough with the way it approaches the history of computing in other regards. Like, the fact that it's Tetris pieces, that's not an accident. You know what I mean? Like, that's a reference to what computers are and how they do. And to the point where it can almost... This is something that if this was a book, you would take for granted. Or a different form of art. But, like, it is capable of using the tone of, like, previous eras in computing to achieve an effect, I think. That might be giving it the benefit of the doubt to a degree, but it's smart enough elsewhere to warrant that. And that's a big step. Like, people argue about fucking games as art forever, and it's tiresome and boring. But something I think gets missed is, like, art's very good at using the history of art to create new art. Whether that's in defiance or obedience to previous forms, right? Like, games have never been very good at that because it's all about the tech race. Like, it's all about kind of like doing the best new cool thing. And I kind of like the idea of a game coming along and going, you know what the tone we want? The tone we want is a Voodoo 3 benchmarking demo from 1996. That's the correct tone for our game. We're going to get that. That, I think, is worth lauding.
Maybe Super Wolfenstein HD is also art referencing...
What if Hitler was wobblier?
So I'm assuming that we'll probably wrap up in a moment, but I just wanted to finish maybe with an anecdote, which was that actually when I was playing through it, I encountered a bug, and the resolution of that was really interesting because I emailed Alan from Crotheam and just was like, okay, so I found a bug, I think, just could you tell me if it is a bug or if it's a bug or whether I've just not been solving it. I just wanted a yes no basically, so I knew whether I should just carry on bashing my head against this thing. And it turned out that the solution I described was the one that was in their design document, but the AI that they've been using in this game about sort of the nature of humanity and like how AI relates to that and stuff, the AI that was testing the puzzles automatically had actually used a different solution to get round the thing. Like, there was, it was just a very slight variation on the thing. But, so the AI had solved it, and I, as a human being, hadn't been able
so
to.
They intended for your solution to work, but they
my
didn't notice
solution was supposed to work, but it didn't, and it created a bug, which meant that a jammer didn't work. But their solving AI had found a different way through, and so it hadn't picked up on the bug.
That's interesting that they had an AI test it.
So I just thought that really tickled me when I got the email chain back through. I was like, oh! So that's a thing that happened.
Proving, without a doubt, that Pip is probably a person.
Still probably.
All we know.
Shall we do questions from questions?
I like questions, and I like questions.
There's so many questions about what a person is and where do the lasers go.
All over.
But other people from the internet have different questions.
Is it whether the knives go? Because we can totally help with that.
The knives go in the Nazi, Pip. And then the knives come out again with the spade.
Yeah.
Is it, can a manatee eat fish? Because I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, there's so many things we don't know. But more specifically, there's something that Chris Adams doesn't know from Twitter. He asks, can anyone talk about WoW?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true. People can. But should we?
Does he mean World of Warcraft, or does he just mean the exclamation?
No, he means World of Warcraft.
I keep hearing good things about this expansion. I haven't played since Burning Crusade, and even then I really just played... Wait, was Burning Crusade? No, Cataclysm. The one that changed the world, because I wanted to go around and see where some places had changed, and I looked at the Thousand Needles and it was like, oh, it's all different. And then I stopped playing.
See, I feel like a marketer's dream, because I would probably resubscribe because it's offering me a molten corgi. And
oh yeah, you posted that gif of it dragging its molten ass across the ground and leaving a trail of lava.
I would totally I just want that, really.
I assumed you had the molten corgi and you were showing off its antics.
No, that's someone else's gif. I feel very hard done by at this point.
Is it a thing that you just get automatically for having the game, or is it...
You have to have logged in within the time designated period, by the anniversary, I think. I might have missed it already, but yeah. What a dog.
I have a tiny Diablo, I think.
I got that.
For having a collector's edition or something, and it weirds me out. I don't like it. They're different universes. What's it doing here?
You'll hate Heroes of the Storm.
I was going to say, you'll hate Blizzard's
I do.
really.
I can't speak authoritatively to any of them because I don't think I play any games that cross over any universes at all, ever. Unless you count Aliens vs Predator.
Well, technically.
I thought there might be a technical...
The Xenomorph skull was in Predator 2. So it's fine.
But I've never played Smash Brothers, and always, even though I don't even have any attachment or affection for Nintendo things, because I've always been a PC gamer, it still offends me that Nintendo things are together that don't come from the same universe. I'm like, how can you allow that? That's wrong!
Protect the dignity and specificity of Metroid.
Yeah.
Do you get weirded out when friends from different walks of your life meet up with each other?
No, because we all live in the same universe.
We're all members of the Tom universe.
Video games, yeah. They're all members of the Tom franchise, which I've been building for many years now. I'm glad to have you all here.
Side characters and cameo walk-on appearances from different entertainment properties within the Tom Francis.
But in Mini Diablo, World of Warcraft, you're losing your mind!
God, if Mini Diablo walked in right now, you'd freak out. You don't belong. You don't belong in the Tom Francis-verse. Get out.
And yet, all of the video game universes and the TV universes all exist within my own, so they are linked in that sense. So actually, if they broke forth into reality...
You should play the Talos Principle.
It would make a certain amount of sense.
I read the actual question after this is from Spouse, who says Warlords ? By which I think he means Warlords of Draenor. I felt the pang. I did, like, as someone who was like a WoW beta player and then played all the way through to Burning Crusade and then stopped. Every time an expansion comes out, I get the kind of like, I remember enjoying that pattern of activities.
Yeah.
And I just don't wanna. Like, it comes down to just really not wanting to get dragged back in. Like,
I think, like with TF2, I make a sort of rational judgment that this isn't actually good for me. Like, it's not that I think I won't enjoy it, it's that I think the sort of type of enjoyment I get from it will be this kind of low, slow burning thing that I can't stop easily, but isn't really adding that much to my life.
yeah, it's that,
That's why I deleted games for, like, the Windows, like, default games from my PC at one point, because Spider Solitaire was ruining my life.
Don't play Pair Solitaire. It will kill you.
like, it's like the 200 hours, no, actually, fucking hell, way more than that. I put into the Old Republic. Like, MMOs for me of that mold are just pleasant activity that fills time, but I mean, the Old Republic, I got a lot out of the narrative, and I genuinely advocate at least some of the storylines through that game as being like as good as anything BioWare have done elsewhere. But like the repeatable stuff, the rote stuff, the dailies, the getting caught into that pattern, I won't do that again. Like, I'm doing it now with Destiny on console, but like the difference there is that it's a shooter, right? Like the basic interaction with the game is still a fun act. I shoot the spacemen, and that's a skill-based thing. Like, that's a big difference for me. Like, not that WoW isn't skill-based, of course it is, but it's fundamentally based around the same rotations forever, the same character. You know, I played an enhancement shaman, and my enhancement shaman will always be an enhancement shaman, and he'll probably still be an enhancement shaman now, pretty much. Maybe I have to learn a new rotation a little bit, but as much as I like the idea of it, I can't. Like, there's too many things I want to achieve before I die.
They do bring you closer to death, these games.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. But by all accounts, they've done some awesome things with it, and like, I really fucking want a garrison. But I know I want it from the part of me that, you know, is also the closest to the front of the roller coaster cart, careening towards my immortality. Max Ursa writes, if you haven't already, would you kindly say a few words on your thoughts towards Elite Dangerous?
We did that. Did we do that a couple of weeks ago? That's not fair to Max, because obviously he's asking now.
Yeah.
But, I've played little bits of it, but this was before it was, you know, the state that it's in now. And
when's it out?
Like,
Tuesday next week.
Yeah, and so because I was playing when I still couldn't get player interaction to work. You know, like I was trying to team up. I was trying to team up with Brendy, and like we planned to go sort of, you know, hopping around space together, but just couldn't even get it to recognise that we were on the same server. Or, you know, it was that.
How does it work in general? Is it all one server, or is it?
It's one server with instancing for individual zones. So if you're in the area around a space station, that's one little mini instance. And the area around, like, it's actually complicated enough that my attempt at doing quickfire Twitter questions will fail if I explain it. But it's basically like dynamic sharding based on interactions between players. Which interacts with the game's 3 tiers of movement speed. It's complicated, and honestly, in my experience of the beta, it never fucking worked. And that's my big concern with going multiplayer. I know that the discussion about Elite going multiplayer only, or like online only to a degree, has been had. So I don't want to go into that. I'm really excited about it. I'm reviewing it for PC Gamer, which is a big task, and one that I'm kind of looking forward to.
I would like to say that in the latest trailer for Elite, which might be the launch trailer.
Yeah. Terrible music.
I'll link it in the show notes. At one point, it sort of weirdly stops and does a close-up on a crate, Gunpoint's artist John Roberts designed that crate.
What, the gold crate?
Yes.
See, I couldn't figure out if that was a deliberate, like... So, PC Gamer did an event with Frontier, which was going to be one of our stream events, like the DayZ one, and it didn't really work because they put us on our own private server, separate from the one everyone else was playing on, to ensure that the instancing stuff worked, and it didn't work.
Still didn't work, shit.
Like, we'd end up on different shards. But that entire PC Gamer event was based around there being 1 unit of gold in at in the cargo hold of Andy Kelly's Anaconda, which is like the biggest ship in the game. And the idea is that all the other PC Gamer pilots were hunting to get that 1 unit of gold from his cargo hold.
Right.
Regardless of how you do it, you talk him out of it, you destroy him, whatever. And Elite and Frontiers devs ended up playing with us. But they ended up deciding to act as Andy's honor guard. So they were just following him around. Like, I only got an extended dogfight with like the guy who did all the art for Nebulae. But like, as far as I can tell, that notion of like I came up with the scenario for that, because I did a lot of PC Gamer stream stuff at the time, and I decided that gold would be the commodity because it made me think of like, Pulp Fiction or something. You know what I mean? It's just it doesn't matter what it is, it's just there to facilitate the story of like chasing this guy across space. And then in the Elite launch trailer, the moment before you see that, like, that crate gets dropped, and then the ship swoops in and grabs it, it says AU on it. It's a gold. It's gold.
Right.
And I was like, and I probably didn't, because it's an obvious thing that any idiot could come up with, including me. But, like, nonetheless, I felt a little bit of ownership over that moment, despite the new metal. So those are my thoughts about Lincoln. Ian Didu Dawson asks a completely relevant question for anyone in this room that follows beauty blogging. Ghost-written celebrity books, cool or not cool?
I saw this question.
Is it a
like,
non-scandal,
what?
or should I be more outraged? I think you should be incredibly outraged.
Anytime
because,
you're asking yourself, should I be more outraged? The answer is probably no.
honestly, I think this is the one to go all out on. If CIA torture didn't flip you over the edge, then some YouTuber getting a book ghostwritten for her for tweens.
Is this a real thing?
Last
Was there a
fucking
story?
story. It really is, yeah, it was a real thing. Beauty
that disconnected.
YouTuber. No, well, I mean, like, I don't follow YouTube channels for
I
teenage
watched
girls.
YouTube's Rewind video for 2014 because
Yeah.
I like to check in with that and find out how much of culture I missed. And I missed about 80% of it. And a lot of it's pretty dumb.
Culture, it's pretty dumb. Tom Francis
People
confirms.
reacting to things, that seems to be the big thing that I
But
don't give a shit about.
As the centre of the
apparently.
Tom Francis-verse, whose fault was that?
Well,
Dunno.
that's true. You orchestrated all this. Hang on, does this mean that I
I
can
never
hold
said this,
you
by the way.
responsible for the Kim Kardashian novel that I read?
Holy shit, you've read the Kim Kardashian novel.
Let's not get
course
into
It's
this.
a novel, not an
Let's not get
autobiography.
into this.
Oh, Tom.
Matthew Street writes, Dear Skull and Crossbones, with the hashtag weatherbomb hitting the UK, what's your favourite explosion or explosive weapon in a game?
Oh, I really like the banana bomb in Worms,
Nice.
where it explodes
Okay.
into smaller bananas and then they also explode.
As of this afternoon, I really like my my super as a warlock in Destiny, where I exploded 3 people all in one place.
That's not a PC game, and therefore you've created a forum thread. Congratulations. The mine would be any attachable C4.
Oh, I want to change mine. Corpse explosion in Diablo 2.
Okay.
Which they had to take out for Diablo 3 because the corpses had ragdoll and they couldn't, like, where the ragdoll ends up is a client-side calculation, so that it won't necessarily be the same for everyone, and so they didn't know where corpses would be, and so corpse explosion couldn't work because then you could be blowing up a corpse that isn't really in the same place for everybody.
That is the best way to explain why client-side versus server-side calculation is important to someone who is
Yep.
immediately bored by those words. Anonymous writes, to what extent is the loot system in Dragon Age Inquisition a vestigial tradition compared to a good looting game, like, for example, Path of Exile? And I would say, as the person who's played Dragon Age Inquisition, a great degree. And this is an interesting...
What does that question mean?
Okay,
I know
so-
what.
So, to what extent is the loot system a vestigial tradition? That means that the loot system is there because you'd kind of expect one.
Oh, okay.
Not because it needs to have one, and that's completely 100% true for that game. Like, it's just not a loot game. Like, basically, the loot you get from, like, anything with a random element is garbage. Like, it's a game about crafting, and actually, that works perfectly for Mass Effect or Dragon Age or any kind of Bioware game, where, like, I'm at this stage now with Inquisition where I haven't finished it yet, but I have the last mission available on the map and I can go there any time. But I'm exploring the world and doing things I've missed. And one of the main things I'm doing is gathering crafting materials so I can make a completely custom set of armor with custom looks for every single companion. Because you can do that in Inquisition, where you couldn't do that in other games, in recent BioWare games at least. You can't, like... the way they do armor for companions is really interesting. So, different pieces of armor will look different on different companions, because they each have their own style. But there's quite substantial variety within each individual style. So coming up with armor that you like for everybody is kind of a game in itself. But it means it's a game about crafting. It's not a game about loot, really. Yeah. Like, I looted an well, not amazing, but like a pretty good suit of plate armor that makes someone look like a Templar. But there were none of my companions that I wanted to look like a Templar, because being a Templar carries political weight in the Dragon Age universe, and it didn't fit. So that random piece of loot I didn't want, because it didn't fit the story. So, honestly, I'd say it's completely vestigial, and good looting games can't have plot expressed through items. They just can't, because randomization fucks that. And I like the way the plot can be expressed through items. I like the way that a developing relationship can be expressed between through the equipment you choose to give somebody. Like,
I feel like I can't be trusted with loot or with apportioning it to people, because as we discovered when I was like, why is my Dragon Age Origins, like, battle plan not working? And then we ascertained that all of my people were wearing each other's clothes, and it was just, you know, like, the heavy armor was on the wrong person, and I was accidentally, you know, like, someone should have really been in medium armor and was kind of wearing the equivalent of, like, you know, a gauzy sheet.
Was that an aesthetic choice, or was it just you didn't have
I maybe had accidentally not really known what I was doing and just put them in things that seemed to make sense at the time.
I'll happily put people in the armour that is not good for them if it looks better.
Well, I kind of wanted...
you shouldn't look so good in orange.
I wanted my main character to go through it just wearing her wedding clothes. Just because I thought the idea of her taking, like, down demons in a wedding dress was just so badass. But unfortunately, wedding dresses aren't amazing for deflecting, you know, anything.
But you could theoretically do it? Like, it's
not really. Like... not without putting the difficulty down to, like, casuals.
Right.
Yeah.
But it lets you wear the wedding dress.
I put it on just to sort of, like, frolic in the fields, generally. Like, especially when I'm blood spattered.
We'll win there. Dragon Age has strong blood spatter.
There's a lot of blood spatter, and because I'm really bad at character creation, she looks really starey. Like, really weirdly starey.
I do find... so I haven't played Inquisition yet, but I played Dragon Age 1 and 2, and I've seen a lot of screenshots of Inquisition, and with all three games, it feels like people are quite stiff. They sort of stand very upright, and they look a bit like...
Do you know why I think that is? I think that's because literally everybody I know is playing an elf. And, like, they've done something that I think actually works really well, which is that elves stand in a way that doesn't look human.
Yeah.
And then that works as a way to express that they're not human. That's a good way of doing that. Not to have their bodies be wildly different, but to have their stance be, like, their elbows are really tucked in and they make them look really straight. But yeah, everyone seems to be playing an elf.
But I've managed to make it so that her eyes don't seem to focus properly. It's really weird, and, like, occasionally I'll still catch sight of her and be like, oh god, you know, you look like an owl.
Yeah.
I remember in Mass Effect just spending ages and ages on my Shepard and getting this, like, face just looked perfect, exactly where I wanted it, and the second I saw her in game, I'm like, oh god, no!
I tried to make her look like me, which is just a surefire way to... They'll just look dazed and slightly ginger. Like, and maybe that is what I look like, but...
I tried to adapt a Dragon Age Origins character for Inquisition, like a character whose save file never carried forward. So I kind of wanted to give him a second life as an Inquisition character. I ended up just making a really hot elf that looks like Tom Hiddleston. So I accidentally kind of tapped into a teenage girl's Tumblr to create my Dragon Age character, so who knows. Oh god, we've got so many questions. James Clark writes, this is going to be a quick one. Any chance of getting old PC Gamer veterans on the podcast? His examples are Tim Edwards, Roth Atherton, Rich McCormick, and Owen Jones. Owen Jones, I think, is from The Guardian.
Yeah.
I think he means Owen Hill.
Yeah, Owen Hill's
yeah.
PC Gamer.
I guess I used to write for PC Gamer.
Yeah, indeed. So one former PC Gamer person here in form of Pip, or now of rock paper shotgun. Another former PC gamer
yeah.
person here, or in form of Tom Francis.
Far more
However,
legit pre-PC gamer.
Owen Hill lives in Sweden, Rich McCormick lives in Japan, Ross Atherton lives in France, and Tim Edwards lives in Chippenham.
They're all completely inaccessible.
Chippenham completely!
That's like 11 minutes on the train. It's never going to happen.
We should ask him.
Connor here writes, what are your board games of the year?
Ooh.
Pip, I figured as a member of Shut Up and Sit Down, you might have an opinion about this.
Oh god, I'm going to look dreadful when I don't, really.
That's the implication.
Shit. I enjoyed Yardmaster. I thought that was neat. It didn't, like, set my world on fire, but it's about, like...
Doesn't sound like it would.
It's a beautifully
Tell me
designed and sort of aesthetically lovely game about sort of piecing together a train out of cards that you take from the centre, like their cargoes and stuff like that. It's not my game of the year in any way, shape or form, but it's kind of the equivalent of like a coffee table board game, like one that you want to be seen to own because it's so pretty. It's kind of like if
I want to be seen to own
Penguin
Yardmaster.
cover art and like 60s movie posters had a baby. Like, it's that kind of like, oh, that's lovely, and then you play it and you're a bit like, well, I don't really set my world on fire, but I can put it on the table. So like, like it's you know, it's decent and it holds up and it makes sense. It's just, yeah, it's not my favourite, and that's why I should, because I don't really know what came out this year because I'm not on top
What about just what you
of it
played
all.
this year?
Oh god, I played. Well, something that I really want to replay is Twilight Imperium, and that's, you know, that's not this year in any way, shape or form, but it's this glorious thing that's sort of really complicated and sort of full of like manoeuvring and trying to manipulate, you know, other people and what you're doing and trying to sort of political posturing, and there's this massive board and it takes like 8 to 10 hours to play through, and I've only ever played it once, and I felt like I was just about getting to grips with it towards the end of the game, and then, you know, it's over and nobody's free to spend, you know, 10 hours arguing round a table for, you know, the next 2 years. So yeah, like that's one that I really want to go back to, and Tales of the Arabian Nights is amazing. I love that game so much. It's you have a book that's almost like a choose your own adventure book that tells you the outcomes of decisions that you make, and it spins this amazing story as you move around the board and try and sort of bend this world to your will, but the world will just keep surprising you and keep bringing more and more ridiculousness, like, you know, upon your world. I think Brendan got possessed by a fish at one point. And, you know, it's that kind of level of, you know, and he was obviously trying to do something else. I think he was probably like, I don't know, trying to help a beggar that he'd found on the roadside, and then suddenly, like, there's, you know, a fish involved.
In video games, I've possessed a fish. And I've been possessed by demons. I've never been possessed by a fish, though. And I've fought demon fish.
But yeah, so there's a whole heap of amazing stuff out there. It's more just that I tend to get roped in for Let's Plays, and so far I've sort of done stuff that's been interesting but hasn't sort of properly set my world on fire. Same with Netrunner. I've enjoyed it. I just haven't kept up with the meta. I haven't. Yeah. Anyone else?
I sort of follow Netrunner without ever playing it. I don't even want to play it because it's 1v1 adversarial, which is the worst format for any game for me, because I don't like adversarial. I don't like if I'm going to be adversarial in any way, I need a team to cooperate with, and because then it's kind of co-op. And I just hate being pitted against other human beings in any sense. But I love the fiction so much, and it's all about corporations and runners, and the words they use in discussing it are all so exciting to me. And like when they talk about tactics, I can listen to that for hours, even though I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
It's the same thing that I get with any kind of esport or with any sort of card game, is where there's so much niche vocabulary and so much passion for it that you can kind of like listen to it and be excited, or
did you watch that?
Have that?
There was like a tournament recently, possibly, it might be the tournament, I don't know what the tournament is, but I was watching a tournament that Nels Anderson was really excited about, and a bunch of other Netrunner people were all like talking about on Twitter, and I actually watched like what turned out to be a crucial moment that I didn't understand, and then when I looked on Twitter I found out Netrunner fans don't understand either.
Yeah.
Because like, it looked like this guy was definitely going to win, he was totally in a dominating position, the other guy only had like a couple of, I don't know, cards or points or whatever left. And then this guy drew a card, and then the other guy just like did something, and then he just won. And it was like, everyone was just in shock. Nobody could believe understand what happened. The commentators were like, why didn't the ice stop him? How was he able to get through that? I thought he only had 3 ice. How did he get through the thing?
I'm going to have to talk to Quinns about this. I want to know what's gone on now. Like, I missed this completely. I want to know.
Yeah, there was something about, like, the guy who lost, there was some basic thing that he should have done every turn, and he just forgot to do it. And because there was no chance this guy was going to have the ability to get through it, and then he did get through it. I don't even know what I'm talking about here.
Oh, interesting. I think the thing with Netrunner, though, is that I feel like, because I still only own the sort of the vanilla, like, base game, and so at this point, so many of my friends own multiple copies of the base game, because, you know, you can use the cards in different ways, like, to build your decks, and, you know, you sort of need duplicates of some in some ways, but also, like, there have been so many sort of extra sets released, and extra cards and extra sort of, you know, just ways of playing now exist, that if I go along to a Netrunner meet, I spend all of my time just going, what is that card? Like, hand it over so I can read the text and work out what the hell's going on, and then you can kind of just get, because I don't even know what I'm guarding against at this point, because I'm sort of out of touch with it, but you know, I think it's rewarding in the same way that something like Dota is. It's just that I picked a different thing in which to pour my time and energy. So, yeah.
So, for me, if we're talking about the thing is like, so the non-computer related game thing that I've done this year that's meant the most to me is Numenera. Like, without a shadow of a doubt. Like, in terms of like, pen and paper, well, it's a pen and paper role-playing game. And it's a game, but it's really a storytelling system. Like, there are game elements to a degree, but they're secondary to the narrative experience of the players involved. Not in a way that I think makes it free of challenge, but the challenge is a creative one for everybody. Like, it's the reason it's special is it diffuses creative power away from the GM towards the players in some quite interesting ways. And I think I've learn a lot about ways of getting the best response from players. Like, that's something that it's taught me. Like, I mean, Tom has seen this from the other side, but like, from my perspective, it's been like, okay, that's not the best way to get people to make a creative decision in this scenario. Or this sort of thing is surprisingly effective at getting people to experiment in an interesting way with the capabilities.
What's been funny for us as players is that we can sometimes tell when what we've done isn't what you're expecting us to do, and my experience of that has been that, like, when that does happen, it seems like we all had that same idea. Like, we all, like, in the very first thing we did, there was an attack on a train, or a convoy, and we all decided to just run away from it and save ourselves. And it seemed like you were, like, at least allowing for the possibility we might not do that. But for us, it was unanimous. All of us were like, oh, obviously we want to just leave this danger and get away and save our own souls.
What was surprising about that wasn't that that's what you did, because you running away was something that I'd always considered you would do, right?
Personally, Tom.
No, well, like, but this is the thing. Like,
we are all deeply amoral, and that
what
comes
was
up.
What was interesting about it is, like, so I had there were two potential outcomes for that. There was either the stay and fight and the run away things, and I had plans for both. What I didn't expect, the thing that really caught me off guard, was like, a lot of what I was experimenting at the time was just giving you opportunity to change your mind, because one of the I actually interviewed the guys making Torment yesterday, which is based in the Numenera setting and the same game system, and they have a weird thing where Numenera is all about improvisation and the GM kind of bending the systems to fit with whatever the players want to do. A game obviously can't do that, so they will present a list of options to the player, and in a way, being able to just present a shopping list of things you can do to the players makes the GM's job a lot easier. Because the thing I've discovered about GMing is, like, when you say something, it sounds like you're suggesting it. Even if all you're all you're doing is saying, hey, I just don't want you to forget that you have these options, or I want you to be aware of the kind of power you have in the scenario. Yeah. Even if it's in a spirit of, for fuck's sake, be creative, it can sometimes sound like, do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's hard, because, like, if you don't say it, players will often just take the path of least resistance and just do what they're told. If you do say it, they'll do the thing you're now telling them to do.
Yeah.
And so in that scenario, I had some caravan guards come up and say, please help us. Like, you've proven you can fight in a different scenario. Please help. And I thought one or two things would happen at that point. I had in my head that they'd either fight the guards out of the perception that they're stopping you from leaving, or you would agree with what the guards are saying and go and fight. What you actually did was tell the guards you would fight, and then run away, which was like amazing to me because I thought the choice was between straightforward heroism and straightforward cowardice, but actually
found a third type of cowardice.
Yeah, exactly. You found new cowardice, and that is the reason it's like the best experience I had with like a tabletop game this year is because of that. It's that moment where like the thing I learned after that first session was, however I think you guys are going to get out of doing something, you will find a more elaborate way of getting out of it. And that's become the story, and I think it now works. Like, now the character of that group of people is sort of set.
Yeah.
And how they solve problems is set, and it kind of functions as a story. And honestly, like, if that's your TV pilot, that episode, that's the selling point. That's the thing people then talk about when they're talking about, like, oh man, I was watching this TV show and it seemed like it was just going to be about anti-heroes, but then they turned out to be real dicks. Like, but on actual board games front, I was going to talk about Cosmic Encounter.
Before you do, I just wanted to mention Dog Eat Dog, because that's another sort of role-playing game, pen and paper kind of thing, and it is, ironically, because I'd forgotten about it earlier, but the most memorable experience that I'd had this year.
Memorable experience I forgot this year.
Around sort of the non-digital.
I think this was nominated in Indiecade. I think it was next to, because Indiecade allows board games, and like, I think, is this the one that's like very political and it's about kind of about power struggles?
Yeah, it's kind of like it sets you up with a horribly uneven power dynamic. Essentially, there's like an occupying force, and there is something that's sort of natives.
One player is the aardvark, everyone else is the manatees.
And you have to sort of, you come up with traits of these people and the traits for the occupiers, and then you play out scenarios. The scenarios are sort of proposed, you move around the table, you know, everyone sort of gets a chance to exercise that creativity, but one person is the invaders basically, and everybody else is the natives. And so it was so profoundly uncomfortable, and you, at the end of each scenario, you have to sort of work out who obeyed the rules, and the end of each one you have to come up with a new rule based on the thing. And the one that it starts you off with is the natives are subservient to or inferior to the occupiers. That's the one you have to obey or be seen to obey the entire way through, and so it escalated, and obviously it sort of taps into things that like people have seen in movies, or preconceptions about what that involves, but just generally as a simulation of horribly unfair and uneven power dynamics, it is wonderful and so effective. And there's a thing with tabletop where you can sort of, you maybe have like an object that you have on the table, and people can kind of touch it to indicate that they are super uncomfortable with what's going on. They need to tap out or whatever. And I was kind of sat there going, who the hell needs that? By the end of that game, I was nearly in tears. We just ended it because I was like, I can't do this anymore. And Brendan had pushed it. He was the occupying nation, and he had managed to get it to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't be in this scenario. And obviously I have the luxury of tapping out, but
the thing I heard about it was that so there's like one player who's in the occupier position of power. What I heard from the creators of it was that when you start the game, you have to actually ask each other how much money you have, and the richest person has to be the occupier.
The richest person is that. It was like, and that was. I mean, you go around the table.
Jesus
it's basically
Christ.
who's the
Gets
poor
real
out
fast,
of games journalists. But I mean, I think in that scenario, because we'd played it once before and had ascertained that someone else was the richest, but when we played it that time, Brendan ended up just sort of as the person who would. Yeah, there's a thing.
Did you actually reveal things, or did you just say, I'm probably the witches?
No. I mean, we did the first time around, so we kind of
Right.
knew, but the second time around we were just like,
okay.
okay, we're going to do it slightly differently, because the first time hadn't really worked, and I think it's partly because we'd gone with maybe a futuristic setting, so it was less anchored to sort of actual political stuff, because I'd been, I don't want to speak for the other guys, but I'd been worried that we would sort of accidentally tread into sensitive territory as sort of overprivileged people who didn't necessarily know, you know,
Sounds like it's
exactly what we
designed to
were
do that.
doing. But I mean, you know, it's kind of, yeah, there are some things that I think maybe it doesn't necessarily do as well, because obviously it relies on things that you have maybe ingested from popular media or from, you know, things like that to create the scenarios, or like, you know, your own understanding of history, which might not necessarily be as complete, or, you know, whatever. But as a basic, basic simulation.
I just wanted to
of
write it in my
uneven
notes so that I
power
get
dynamics.
so I can link it in the show notes. And what I've written is fog, rat, frog.
I'd much rather play that.
That is semantically close to dog eat dog.
But there's Brendy wrote amazingly about it on Shut Up and Sit Down, so I will, I'll send you the link for it. Sorry, but you were saying about Cosmic Encounter.
I was going to. So yeah, Cosmic Encounter is a card game, kind of a deck building game with some strategy elements. That is special because it's not new for this year, but I played it for the first time this year. Special because it has a shitload of races that you can play, and characters have special abilities. And the way that the special abilities for races that even aren't being played get shuffled into the deck as powers that players can pick up. And the reason that's cool, it's sort of space-based, as you might expect from the name, is that a lot of them break the rules of what you'd expect is possible in a card game. I mean, some of them are like, one example that's really interesting is one player race nominates another player at the beginning of the game, and then at a point of the game of their choosing, they swap places with that player, and they take on that player's power, all of their stuff, their race, their position in the game, everything. And the other players don't know which person they've chosen to swap with, and that changes the entire tone of the game from then on. Because if that player then looks like they're supporting somebody, that's the most suspect thing in the world, because they're going to try and body snatch them later on. And thinking that you might be their target is terrifying, because you want them to do well because you might be them later. But do you tank yourself, and then risk not being them? So that's
So you could pretend to target the most powerful player, so that they think they're going to switch places with you, and they try and help you. And
Yeah,
you
exactly.
actually are going to target someone else.
But the one that I loved was a race called The Thief, who has a rule where there's like a draw pile of obviously cards people draw when they need to draw cards into their hand, and the discard pile. And the thief is allowed to steal cards from there. Not in a, every once a turn you can take a card from the top kind of formalized way. Literally, if you can get away with it, you can take it. You're just allowed to steal and
But
cheat.
if someone catches you, you're not.
Yeah. No, actually, it's different. If someone catches you stealing, you have to give back everything you just took, but the cards get moved closer to you. So catching the thief, physically closer, catching the thief actually makes it easier for them to steal in the future. And this led to one of the greatest gaming moments I've had this year, where there were 4 of us playing, and the victory was at a certain point on a certain turn. One of 2 players were going to reach the kind of victory point limit, which determines who wins. And they were in negotiations to figure out whether one of them would win, or whether they could both win together by kind of shoving their victory points up over the threshold at the same time. And in order to stop them, I needed to find a card that allowed me to cancel the last card that had been played. I think that's how it works. You can just basically deny a thing that's just happened. And these 2 guys were locked into a heated debate with each other, and the third guy was kind of watching this, because this is the entire outcome of this, long game that we've played. And I was just stealing from the draw pile, just going through it, just stealing constantly. And I stole 28 cards. And a normal hand is 5 or 6. And I was just, because I was panicking. So if I don't stop this now, I come third. Whatever happens, I come third. And, I was stealing. And first I was trying to, sleight of hand it a bit, just shuffling it into my palm. And then eventually I was just no, go. And eventually I stopped stealing because I hadn't found it. And I'd seen that they'd kind of looked up to kind of look at the rest of the room. and one of them looked at my hand, and I'm holding like half a deck of cards. And it's just this moment like, Chris, have you just stolen like half of the deck? And I was like, yes. And I had to give half the deck back. And then they won. And then we're like, what would have the next card been if Chris had managed to steal one more card? And it was the card I needed to end it. It was the next card in the pile. It was such an amazing feeling. The Cosmic Encounter is great. I imagine the people who played that are very happy to hear me say that. But like, Cosmic Encounter is amazing. Ian Chain writes, "You're all too nice. I want to hear some CNC rage. What are the most overrated games?" I don't have an answer for this. I like things.
I think I bounce off things quickly, so if I don't think it's worth playing, I'll just stop. Really,
yeah, and I'm ultra fascist about that now. Or just
Tom
totally
Francis,
unforgiving.
time fascist.
They're like, I play things for like a minute. If it hasn't grabbed me in a minute, fuck it forever. Not because it's bad. Like, it's not that I think for sure this can't be any good. It's just that, well, there are things that can grab me in a minute, and there are thousands of those things coming out every month. So I don't need to spend any time with the ones that don't respect my time, don't want to draw me in.
Like, I find I struggle to say a game is overrated without feeling like I'm criticising people who like it, because like that's implicit in the phrase.
Yeah, I think that's not a helpful classification. If you think something's bad, then say so.
In
If
terms
it's
of
good, then say so.
Overrated for me tends to be more about the fact that I wasn't there when it was first released, and so I don't have that context of like what it actually meant at the time.
That thing for like saying you're wrong to like this. That fun that you just had is invalid.
But like, so people have been really astounded that I've never played Half-Life and never played Half-Life 2. Really, I mean, I've started Half-Life and I've just never completed it.
Just
Never really
Half-Life 2.
got far through. But as well, it was kind of a thing that was really important at the time, and there was a lot of context that was around that. And so even if I do play it, even if I do complete it, it will never quite mean the same thing to me. I will just get angry with ladders and how ladders work, and I'll get angry at the fact that actually one of the reasons I haven't finished the original Half-Life is because my playthrough glitched out and I now can't get through a vent in the ceiling because it won't let me climb on top of the box because the box still thinks that there's a person that I killed underneath it. You know, there's that kind of stuff, so I'm just permanently unable to progress, so I'd have to start again, and it just doesn't mean enough to me to do that, even though it gets so much praise.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Hitman, because that's a series I've never gotten on with.
Series.
Because, like, so many people whose opinions I respect love it. Blood Money particularly. And I've tried to get through it multiple times, and every single time been put off by the shitty controls and the sense that your freedom is being curtailed by just a kind of lack of pedantic knowledge of the game environment. Like, it's trial and error to an extreme for me, and I can kind of see the sense of mastery that comes with really knowing how those missions fit together and how to manipulate them. But for the person that's kind of experimenting it, it's a lot of failure with a lot of repetition for going back to it. So, but I don't disrespectfully like it on those grounds, because the failure is explicitly mine. It's just, that's the thing I think that everyone I know loves that I don't, is Hitman, I think.
It does commit a cardinal sin, which is it limits your saves. And, like, there's a limited number of save slots, and there's also a limited number of times you can use them, and that depends on your difficulty mode, and that's so fucking irritating.
It feels like the kind of game that's designed to be this amazing improvisational experience where you manage to kill the target and just barely escape, and, you know, that kind of thing that comes with the limited saves. But everything about that game's reward system values perfection,
Yeah.
and that's what's frustrating about it. Like,
that's what I like about it, is I want to just replay it until I get it exactly the way I want it. Even if it's not the Silent Assassin way, like, I will play it through where I can only use the sniper rifle. And as long as I only use the sniper rifle, that is a perfect playthrough, even if it tells me I got a D or whatever. And so it's like, for me, the game is replaying the missions and finding new ways to do them.
I think I just never felt comfortable enough with its basic systems. Like, the controls are really clunky. Like, something like Dishonored, I can do that in, but, like, everything's very fluid and intuitive in that game, whereas it just isn't in Hitman. Anyway, that's not really... I don't really intend to hit shit on Hitman, because I think it's, on paper, great. It's just... It's probably, like, if this question was...
shit, man.
I think I have that with Assassin's Creed. I just don't...
Yeah, I think if this question was, what on paper great game do you not actually like? Mine would be Hitman. Alex Riley asks, have you discussed Binding of Isaac Rebirth and I've missed it? If not, why not? I find the themes very interesting and or disturbing. I haven't played it yet. I reviewed the original Binding of Isaac and I liked it a lot, but...
I haven't played it because the theme actually puts me off, like, the sort of...
Or being a fetus in a blood maze.
Yeah, and just, like, the turds and the fact that, like, everything is just so fucking depressing actually gets to me.
Too much pooping for Tom. How about Pip?
I haven't played it because I tried the original and I just didn't enjoy it. It's not the kind of it's just not my kind of thing, I think. Like I just so many friends are actually sort of, you know, raving about the game and the sort of the control system, you know, like just the experience of playing it as well, and sort of the mastery that they get over it. But I never experienced any of that. I really didn't enjoy it.
It's basically like roguelike Robotron, but with dead babies and Fear of God.
It's super popular.
Yeah, I really like. I gave it one of the highest scores I've given it.
I was thinking of going back to it simply because I thought maybe I'd changed in the last few years, because I've grown progressively more comfortable with. This is going to sound like dumb, but gaming on PC, because I had more of a console background and then was working in industries that weren't gaming, and so I think there are a bunch of things that I tried when I first switched over to tech and then gaming that I think are now
loudest pouring noises 2014 goes to.
We are, just so you know, we are drinking Crowbar and Custard, which is Morgan spiced rum and apple and rhubarb juice.
It's very like drinking sweets.
It's the very
amazing.
Very sweet cocktail of choice of the Crit and Crowbar podcast. Yes. It's why this quick-fire Twitter questions round has lasted 50 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Should we skip to the emails, maybe?
Well, there's one left.
Yes or no, really.
That's kind of what I had in mind, but it's amazing how that didn't happen.
Well, yes, then.
Ewan Hurrell asks, what's on the wish list to get from Santa, Krampus, or a generous Gabe Newell this year, lads? But I'm going to add and or ladies, because he wasn't to know.
I have asked my dad to make me a custom standing desk, because I can't find one that meets my particular needs. Like a...
That's a good dad thing to build.
Yeah. I think he'll like it, but he did warn me he can't do it for Christmas because it takes him ages.
I have asked my mum for some form of beard trimmer because finally, after a long period of deciding whether or not I wanted a beard, I've decided that I have a beard now, and comparisons to a tiny Graham Smith be damned.
I was thinking I might ask for membership to an art gallery again. I used to have Tate membership and I really did love that. And it meant I find some of their curation quite difficult, and being able to just loop around and go into the exhibition again is quite useful, because sometimes they sort of have a circular approach.
Did you ask for that from your folks?
I haven't yet. But if they're listening, hi, that's what I want. No, really.
Question from the forum. Zorn writes, I don't think Zorn is his real name. Dear GPS personalities, Cracker, Kringle, Bog, and potential talented guest panelists, that's you, Pip, or he says, or Rich Stanton. A little sick burn. Over the years, some games have tested the tepid waters of a new genre that strays from their comfort zone. Flagship first-person shooter Halo had a reunion with its real-time strategy roots. Fallout stepped from the perspective of its protagonist, and Warcraft started off as a real-time strategy and turned into a soul-sucking money printer. An exclusive genre indeed. I don't know why I'm reading this out in that voice, but never mind. Some of these genre swaps appear to have become the norm for said games, such as the case with Fallout and GTA, while others are less well received, such as XCOM Declassified or Why Buy Skyrim Once when you can pay us $15 a month for the unmoddable version in Elder Scrolls Online, which I think is actually giving Elder Scrolls Online a lot of credit, because it's nowhere as good as Skyrim. Thus arrives my two-part question. Has there been an instance where a game series added a new entry that strayed from the original's genre to which you either greatly opposed but was happily surprised to find actually good, or B, was thrilled to try out only to find it sucks horrid little monkey nuts? The second part then is, What game series would you like to see release a new entry in a different genre? Personally, I'd like to see Call of Duty a Call of Duty Telltale style adventure story game where you initiate dialogue options, solve puzzles, and show romantic interest by shooting someone in the face.
I would like to high five Zorn right now.
That's very good, yeah.
That's all for now. Thank you for enjoyable free insights every week. P.S. I don't mean it, Rich. I just needed a good sport for the fodder, and I had a feeling Pip would hunt me down and bludgeon me with some kind of frilly headpiece if I mentioned her instead.
I will high five him with my frilly headpiece.
That's got to be the first person who's more scared of Pip than they are of Rich Stanton.
The thing is, though, like, you can sort of tell what Rich is going to do, whereas Pip is always
That's
unpredictable.
true.
Will this Minecraft map make Pip cry or fly into an indefatigable rage?
Oh no. I have an answer to this question though.
Oh, good.
It's not on PC though, am I going to have to leave the room?
For fuck's sake. What
It's
game?
Pokemon Snap!
It's always Pokemon Snap with you.
I know, but it is the single greatest game possibly of all time.
It's probably the greatest
And
light gun
it's-
shooter of all time.
And it is far better than original Pokemon. I'm just going to put that out there.
That's a
because,
complete
quite
lie,
frankly,
and you know it.
No, it's and to answer the second question in a way that doesn't really answer the second question, I think Pokemon Snap 2 should happen. And it should also have the subtitle Snap Up to the Streets, because that would just make me very happy. And that is all I have to say, and I am done.
I would, I don't know if it really fits either of his categories, but I was really glad that Fallout 3 happened and was the way it was. I just fucking loved that game wholeheartedly, and I've never really got into either of the previous Fallouts. I'm sure they're good in the ways people say they're good, but it was an inaccessible form to me. And first-person, semi-Elder Scrolls type RPG game is very accessible to me, and in fact the VAT system in particular was like a really good way to do combat, and I really like that.
I don't think I have an answer to the genre shift that I hated, but in terms of the genre shift that I liked, I just finished The Last Court, which is Fail Better's Dragon Age game. So Fail Better are the people who made Fallen London, the browser-based story game. They made a standalone Dragon Age game, which ties into Dragon Age Keep, which is the save game.
It's literally a Dragon Age game.
No, it is literally a Dragon
Yeah.
Age game. And it even has effects in Inquisition. Minor, but they are there. Like,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. And it was actually going to be, I ended up not being able to be on the podcast last week, but it's going to be what I talked about last week, so I'm not going to go mega on about it, but it wasn't that I was opposed to the existence of it, but like, I suppose I've always been a bit wary about anyone other than like the writers team I trust getting their hands on Dragon Age. Like, Dragon Age is notable for having a very consistent writing team over time. Obviously people have come to it from the Mass Effect franchise and whatever, but the core of it has been consistent, and this notion of a different developer entirely in a different country writing a Dragon Age story has been a bit like, I was kind of concerned about what direction to take it. And but it's really good, and the writing is very Fallen London in some ways that work actually, and it feels very different to anything else in the series. Weirdly, it feels more indebted to George R.R. Martin than anything else Dragon Age does, and Dragon Age already has some things that it owes to George R.R. Martin, just in terms of language. But again, that just might be because it's good fantasy writing, and that's a point of commonality. But it's really good, and it's unlike Fallen London, which kind of goes on forever. It's finite, which like there's an ending. I have some problems with the way, like, the thing that those games, the Story Nexus games, would never tell you is that they are fundamentally deck building games, pretty much. They're about what cards you have in your hand and how you can play certain narrative situations to max out your resources. And The Last Court suffers to the degree to which it becomes purely about how many freedom you can acquire, or whatever it is, whatever resource you decide to value. Which isn't very effective narratively towards the end, but it is actually an interesting spin-off, and I would really recommend it, because you don't have to spend money to enjoy it. Like, you get like refreshing action points that allow you to do things in the game, and it took me about a week to play the entire thing from start to finish, and I feel like the character I made for that is as valid a part of the Dragon Age world as any of my 3 other protagonists. So I would recommend it, basically.
I guess, I don't know how well it fits this question, but like, just the multiplayer modes of things that I didn't think wanted multiplayer modes.
Yeah.
I won't vouch for Bioshock. I didn't get anything out of that. But Mass Effect 3 having a deathmatch multiplayer, I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, don't fucking do that just because you have to. And then you play it and you're like, actually, that's pretty good.
Yeah, actually, though, with that in mind, Inquisitions doesn't work. Like, it's not very good. Like, that combat system, which is... Like, combat is sort of mush in Dragon Age, and it has been for a while, honestly. Like, they've tried to make it interesting, and they've struggled. And Mass Effect multiplayer, it's the same format as Mass Effect multiplayer, that you take missions, and then you unlock characters that you go on those missions with. Mass Effect multiplayer worked because it was a shooter. And because the classes you unlocked fundamentally changed how you played the game. Dragon Age just doesn't have that, because it's still not turn-based, but it's, you know, it's 2 Pokemon evolutions along from a turn-based game. And it's like, I don't know, turn-based EO evolved into hold down left click EO. It's not very effective. That's a mixed Pokemon metaphor, but never mind. I'm going to move on because you know what else is finite? This podcast. Steve writes, anyway, Crowbards, I first wanted to thank Chris and Marsh, and to a lesser extent the Bummeister Rich, for your Dark Souls 2 playthrough. And I wanted to stop him here. Like, one of the reasons I want to read out this question is, I think he's confused me and Tom Senior.
Yeah, I didn't think you were.
So the 3 people doing the Dark Souls 2 playthrough are Tom Senior, Marsh, and Rich Stanton. Not me. But I appreciate that nonetheless. But it's not. It wasn't me.
I appreciate your false praise.
Anyway, he continues, which has enabled me to actually get beyond the numpty proving grounds of the early game to a place that's now beyond do good selves. Thanks. Secondly, a question. Since enjoying Dark Souls with you via the power of YouTube, I found myself employing bonk, bosh, and other onomatopoeic utterances for the simplest of real-life activities. Selecting an icon, clicking submit, placing some bread on a plate. It confuses my 2-year-old no end, though, to be fair. He's only 2 and is confused by most things.
Yeah, I would think.
My question is, what similar video game actions do you find yourself using to enrich mundane activities consciously or unconsciously? Please keep on keeping on. Thumbs has jumped the shark, so it's a good thing crowbars are awesome. I don't really agree with that. What? I didn't actually read that before I said it. Am I still wearing a Idle Thumbs t-shirt? No. You're all I have left, no pressure, Steve. I think the best letters are the ones that sound like someone's last letter.
Yeah, that got serious real quick.
Steve, that was dramatic.
What was the question again?
Like, what video game things would be translated into real life unconsciously, consciously, like sound effects or actions or whatever? Mine's gonna be dancing.
I mean, every time I look at anything at the moment, I look to see if there's another card 2 spaces down that could be matched to the same suit, so I can delete it, and therefore move the deck along, which is what you do in Pair Solitaire.
I have 2. One is that when I was playing a lot of Fallout 3, I actually started stopping and being about to pick up bottle caps in real life. Which is, anyway. The other one is that a year or 2 ago I played too much Call of Duty, and I tried to stealth mission around my house so that my housemate's cat didn't see me, which resulted in me falling off the banisters and onto the stairs as I tried to clamber, so that, because the challenge was the cat would be like sat in the hall facing a different direction, and I would try and get into the kitchen. This was like the house before I live in now, and I'd try and get to the kitchen without the cat turning around or being alerted to my presence, and so that involved a certain amount of stealth and clambering, and then there was a certain amount of falling down the stairs and falling off banisters and being quite bruised, so that I really shouldn't have told that story. Anyway,
if I'm ever
you know,
unoccupied, like in real life, for like a couple of seconds and no one's around, I go to my idle animation, which is a kind of like, just a kind of like idle grooving, you know? And I realised the other night, but I did this in like World of Warcraft and Guild Wars as well, but I realised the other night while playing Destiny with you, Pip, actually, that every time I get slightly ahead and I need to wait for you to catch up because my character runs faster than you.
Oh, you are always dancing.
I'm just dancing. Like, it's just like, well, I've stopped for a second, time to dance. And that's, I don't know, that's a chicken and egg thing. I don't know whether I do that because of games or I do that in games because that's what I would always do, but...
I think you've got the Robin mod installed. You're always dancing on your own.
I am always dancing on my own. I have the Robin mod installed in my life, actually.
Yeah.
I used to. I guess I haven't done it in years, but Little Big Adventure is a third-person French adventure game in which you switch between different modes of behaviour, and normal is the one in which you can use things, and then discreet is the one in which you can sneak, and then aggressive is the one in which you can punch, and sporty is the one in which you can run and sprint and jump. And each one is a total new mode of behaviour with its own idle animations and its own running animations and its own behaviour stuff. And in the sporty mode, when you're idle, you sort of jog on the spot and then move your arms up into the kind of model T pose that video game models do, and then put them down again and go. And I used to do that a lot. Like it's quite useful to keep your sort of like metabolism high at some points, like between exercises or something. And that would be my default thing. I would just imitate what Twinsen does in LBA in sporty mode, which is run on the spot and then move your arms up and go.
I don't think we came out of that well.
No. Anyway, Tom Meach writes, "Hi there, CNC. I was interested listening to your comments on the offline Elite Dangerous debacle. Like you, I was sad to hear there'd be no offline mode in Elite Dangerous, and balked at the idea of having to share my galaxy with anyone else." Much like Tom Francis. However, on more careful reading, my worries were unfounded. There is still a solo mode where I can fly around the galaxy without fear of bumping into any real people. Solo mode doesn't solve the problem caused by a lack of internets, but I'm at least safe from a lot of the online tomfoolery associated with online gaming. My question is, do you know of any games that have suffered from bad messaging, and that if you can get past the PR faux pas, are actually good games? Thanks for casting everyone, Tom. I think messaging is an underrated part of what dictates how the public receives games, but that's only relevant to the extent that you believe that the quality of the game is what Metacritic, Twitter, or comment threads tells you it is.
So Valve have a long history of like, they sort of behave in the best possible way that can still get you in trouble. And so, like, the fact that the orange box was a scandal is mind-blowing. Like, this is a box that you buy that gets you Portal, Team Fortress 2, and Half-Life 2 Episode 2, and that was a PR disaster. Because initially they said they were going to offer a black box that would only get you those things and not... Which way around was it? Was the black box only got you those things and not Half-Life 2? And then eventually they changed it so they scrapped that one and you had to get Half-Life 2 as well, even though you already owned it.
Assholes.
But it was still the same price, and it was still incredibly cheap for those things. It wasn't the same price as the black box, but it was still like an incredibly cheap price for those 3 completely new, incredible, world-changing games. And they still managed to turn it into a PR disaster by promising something that they weren't going to deliver and then cancelling it and basically pulling a defeat from the jaws of victory.
I'd say that perhaps Destiny suffered from that, because I think that I feel like the reviews that I read were more based on what people thought the game would be rather than it was in
Destiny
some
definitely
ways.
did.
And so
It's such a console game.
That was one of the key problems with its communication, was that they,
they
waited. Game.
We could make this relevant by saying they waited a long time to come on PC.
But they still haven't.
Yeah, indeed.
sorry, I'll shut up about Destiny. I was just so pleased with myself.
No, because I totally agree with you, but I don't know, like...
As a PC gamer who's not played Destiny, because I'm solely a PC gamer pretty much, Destiny looks so fucking dry. Every time I see a screenshot and it, like, the words are just...
It's so beautiful.
Random nerd words, and it's all written in Helvetica, and it's
like,
all
You were
just so...
just saying how much you loved random nerd words in Netrunner.
Yeah, you can't...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
No, but
Like-
that's exactly... the difference is that, like, Netrunner, when I hear those words, I'm like, oh, that sounds so cool, I want to hear about it. And then Destiny, I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake.
No, seriously. Let the fucking Dinklebot babble into your brain. It's so nice. Anyway,
Sorry.
I would go with... I had an answer for this like 20 seconds ago, but I've managed to erase it from my brain with rum. Fuck, it's gone.
What was the question again?
What games suffer from bad messaging, and if you can get past the PR faux pas, are actually good games? There's so many, because PR for power, like, marketing is generally terrible, because marketing isn't aimed at the kind of people who read enthusiast sites or think seriously enough about games to sit in a room and record thoughts about them every week, right? Like, feeling slightly insulted by marketing is such a universal theme that, I don't know.
And there are so many articles on websites that you can just sort of find any number of those things just by, you know, the kind of article that is like, why such and such was overlooked and is secretly the best game ever, or like the best game of the franchise, or, you know, why it wasn't understood at the time. You know, there are so many games, or so many articles rather, that sort of cover that kind of ground, that kind of implies that certainly the first pass wasn't the most accurate pass.
Yeah. I've completely forgotten the thing I was going to say, so I'm going to move on.
That's fair.
Gabe writes, hey, this is a question for Tom F.
Is it Gabe
Hooray!
Newell?
I'm here.
Is it Gabe Newell? Is this how he's reaching out to you now?
So, I've been watching you play Far Cry 4, and it strikes me just how much effort you put into making the game fun. Not Ubisoft Montreal. You, Tom. The real designer of Far Cry. I'm saying that. Me, Chris, not Gabe. Not only do you have to slog through the campaign bits, but you're consistently putting extra limitations on yourself, usually to fit a particular narrative you want to create, to make whatever you're doing more interesting. It's inspired me to go back to Far Cry 3, a game I really didn't like, and now I'm actually really enjoying it using this approach. It feels like a way of replacing difficulty in games that have become mostly about being power fantasies. Is this something that you think about when you design? Do you consciously try to create ways to invite players to do this within your games? Also, would you like Far Cry 4 more if it made open combat less viable and forced you to play that you would tend to like to? Thanks for all the things y'all do, Gabe.
Yeah. So the way I play Far Cry 4 is when I'm taking down, I only care about outposts. Plot missions are just a thing I have to do to get access to certain areas, and I only do them for as long as I absolutely have to, and then I stop. The main thing I like is taking down outposts, which are a thing that are just in the open world. You can come at them from any angle, you can use any weapon, you can choose whatever method you like. But the way that the mechanics work, they're really, really good, but they're not quite the way I want them to work. Because you can get a thing that's a silent sniper rifle, and you can go miles away, and then you can just shoot everybody from miles away, silently. And they get very suspicious. They kind of know roughly where you are, and they look at you, and if you reveal yourself, then they can detect you. So it's a little bit harder, but you can still just shoot them all in the head, and it's not that difficult. And I don't want it to be that easy. I want it to be more of a game about how do I take out these alarms and then start attacking people. Because one of the weird things about Far Cry 4 is if you just kill somebody and all his friends find the body, they won't trigger the alarm. And if they destroy one of the alarms, they won't trigger the other alarm. They'll be like, oh, well, that just happened. I guess we just carry on with our lives now. Like, they'll be suspicious and they'll...
Well, Jim's dead and the alarm's broken, but...
They'll leave their, like, normal patrol post, and that makes it, like, a tiny bit more difficult, but they won't actually trigger an alarm. And actually, like, the business of, like, where are the alarms? How can I disable them? How can I get close enough to disable them in person rather than shooting them from a distance is really interesting. The game never forces you to do that, because you can just shoot them all with a sniper rifle, or you can just shoot all people with a sniper rifle, and as long as no one directly sees that you are RJ Gale, the actual, that particular person, as long as they don't know that, they'll never set off an alarm. And the way I want it to work is that if they find a body, they set off an alarm. If they find a broken alarm, they set off an alarm. And I think if you go to an alarm in person and disable it manually rather than shooting it, that should be a sort of invisible takedown on an alarm, which means that even if they see that alarm afterwards, they can't tell that it's broken. If you shoot it, it makes sense that they can see it's broken and they go, oh my god, the alarm's been broken. And I think if they see that, they should actually go and trigger any other alarms that are still in existence. And so that turns into a really interesting game of like, okay, if there's more than one alarm, I need to disable at least one of them in person. So which is the easiest one to get to, and can I get to it? And then if I disable it in person, no one will ever notice anything's wrong. I don't kill anybody, I have to slip past them, which makes it a really interesting stealth game. And then when I've disabled all but one alarm, or all but maybe two that I can see from a really good vantage point, then I can just snipe those last alarms, and even if they see it happening, it doesn't matter because they can't get to an alarm before I blow them all up. And then they're alert, but they can't do anything about it, and that's a really cool, like, mechanic. The game doesn't require you to do that, but I just pretend you have to do that because it's way more fun if you do.
Did Assassin's Creed 4 offer more of that? Because I remember, because I never played the full game. I played it at a preview event, so I didn't really have much time with it at all. But I spoke to the developers, and they were sort of talking about how plantations would work in that game, and that you would have sort of guards that would then, activate a bell tower or something, that would let them know that you were
there were just bells hanging from from like wooden posts, and the way you disabled them when you got to them was you just reach in with your blade and you cut off
you
the
cut
little
the clapper.
Yeah,
Oh,
whatever.
for goodness sake. Well, I suppose that would work. I mean, that's...
But it's like, then people run to the bell, and there's this bell, and they try and ring it, but it doesn't work because there's no thing inside it. Is that called the clapper?
Yeah, like the clapper is the thing inside that makes that hits against the side.
So it has no clapper, but they still have...
Campanology.
They have,
I used to be a bell ringer.
Really? I didn't know that.
I might have got that wrong, but I think I'm right though.
No, that sounds right.
I used to do it at people's weddings.
But these people,
Not
these people have,
Assassin's
like... They have hammers and swords. They have guns sometimes. They could just fire their fucking gun. That would get the message across.
Or you get a hammer and whack the bell, Like, you can make that thing make a noise.
Yeah, cutting out the little tiny ball in the middle doesn't necessarily make it completely silent forever. What was the question?
I have no idea.
It was, do you design games with that kind of...
freedom in mind.
Yeah.
Actually, that's more interesting.
Yes, sorry, I
It's
did want to talk about that.
Would you build a game that someone could redesign for themselves in that way?
Yeah, so I tried to be quite open-minded with a gunpoint and let people do lots of different solutions. But in particular, like, I designed the game just to be possible. Like, oh, you can complete this puzzle. There is a way to get around this. And then only afterwards did I go back and check, can you do this without hurting anybody? Is there a way to get past all these guards without punching anyone, without, actually eliminating the guards? And it turns out there was, on almost all the levels that I'd already built. And it was so much more fun than the normal way. I was playing it and it was just like, it was like playing a really good, like, a game that was designed just for me that I'd never played before. Because these were solutions that I had never intended. I didn't know that you could get past them this way. But I was discovering it for myself and being like, oh shit, if I jump up on the ceiling here, this guy's going to walk straight past me and I can go straight down those stairs. And as long as I hit that light switch quick enough and it's wired for that alarm, this guy will be distracted over there and then I'll get down there. And I was having these like amazing game playing moments with a game that I'd made, but the things I was interacting with were things that I'd never designed. It was just like, I'd made sure it was possible to do it with killing people or punching people. And it turned out it was also possible without punching people, but it was just way harder, but also way more satisfying.
Has that changed your opinion of games where you respect the amount of freedom that the player is given? Like, that you can appreciate how that thing can be an accident now for a designer?
I guess I haven't reduced the amount of credit I give any game. Like, if it allows me to do that, then I'm always like, that's fantastic. And I don't really, like with Far Cry 4's Outposts, I'd never really think about when I do it undetected. I don't think, does someone design whether I could do that undetected? Because you have so many options that I kind of know whichever way I did it, they probably didn't know I could do it that exact particular way. It probably wasn't tested. I'm sure they checked that it could be done undetected, but I'm also sure they didn't try my particular method, because you can literally, you have 360 degrees of freedom. You can come at it from any angle you like.
Apart from underground. The forbidden angle.
When you find that stuff as a designer of a game, is there a sort of a moment where you aren't sure whether to incentivize it in some way, like, or is it just entirely, well, that's an interesting thing, I wonder if people will do it? Like, are you tempted to add an achievement for particular styles, or is it, how do you...
The way I did it with Gunpoint was I did have achievements for certain styles, but it was just you do one mission in that style and you get the achievement, so I don't try and incentivize you to do the whole game that way. And I only checked that you could do the whole game without killing anyone. You can do the whole game without hurting anybody, but you have to be seen by some people. So it's kind of like, you can ghost it, you can not be seen by anybody, as long as you're willing to kill people, and you can not kill people or hurt people, as long as you're willing to be seen by some people. So there's no, as far as I know, there's no 100% perfect playthrough where you're not seen, ever detected, never hurt anybody, because most of the ways of not hurting people involve jumping on somebody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I like games less for thinking that might not be intentional.
We have an absolute shitload of really good questions this week. And I think because we're nearing on 3 hours, I'm going to have to bring this in. So I'm going to ask a question from Tom, who actually sent a couple of questions in, and who apparently we butchered his surname in a previous podcast.
Oh shit.
I didn't actually write his surname down while recording the questions, so I can't attempt to not butcher it again.
We should call him Tom. Just Tom.
Tom, we're sorry about your surname. I mean that we butchered it. Not.
We're doing it worse now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
He writes-
I hope you're happy.
He writes, I'm replaying Mass Effect, which I've been thinking about doing actually.
Don't you do that most years?
I saw a picture of a spaceship. Also, I have the Normandy on my desk, and sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I should. Last night I hit a quest where some douchebag wanted me to get him some drugs. Since my shepherd doesn't believe in artificial enhancement and might be slightly racist against white humans, I told him to stuff it. Herein lies the problem. I just turned down a quest, meaning I'm indirectly getting punished for a character choice by not receiving XP or items that I could have received by doing the quest. Then again, the game couldn't reward me for not doing the quest and getting the free XP since I could just breeze through the whole game, not doing quests but still progressing. The solution seems to be to get rid of the XP system, and yes, I'm realizing I'm asking for an RPG without RPG elements. Do any such games exist? The only thing I could think of is a Bethesda RPG, but aside from New Vegas, kind of not a Bethesda RPG, because it's an Obsidian RPG, choice isn't a major theme. Never had someone butcher my last name before, maybe it's a British thing, cheers Tom. I wanted to read this one out because it reflects on a whole shitload of things I've been thinking about RPGs recently, but
Can we see his last name?
it's not on this document
Okay.
because I'm incompetent.
His name is Tom Butcher.
I
Were
want to-
you not listening?
I want to try.
I think it's Sabatino or Sabatiano, but I can't remember whether there's an extra I in it, so I can't.
Sabutio.
Tim
not
Sabutio,
helping.
welcome to the podcast.
Welcome,
I'm
Tam
sorry.
Sabutio.
Tim, I'm so sorry.
No, you're not. So let's do this. Pip, the other day we were having a conversation about your ongoing Dragon Age Origins problems
I was totally thinking about this.
because it's directly relevant.
It's
Perhaps.
so relevant. It's almost as if we
and
lived video games.
I was trying to explain to you, because I realised that, Dragon Age is one of my favourite RPG series of all time. And one of my favourite game series of all time. Structurally, I prefer it to Mass Effect, but there's really one rule for Dragon Age, which is it doesn't really matter what decisions you make, as long as you make decisions. Activity is more important than passivity. Good and evil exists in the game, or ruthlessness and kindness, depending on how you approach the story, but what actually matters is whether or not you do things, not whether or not what decisions you subsequently make, because the game is balanced against the idea that you will receive relatively equal rewards for approaching one moral path or another, but the real punishments are reserved for people who ignore content. And so therefore, the most important skill in the game really is pushing out the fog of war wherever you find it, clicking on every doorway, clicking on every NPC, doing everything. And one of the things that's really interesting about Dragon Age Inquisition is it does away with that. It's no longer important to do everything. There are things that are important to do, but they're made very clear to you, whereas things that are obviously side quests are obviously side quests. It's much more freeform, and so if you come at it, but there's also a vast amount more to do. So if you come at it from a traditional Dragon Age angle, you're like, holy shit, how the hell am I going to do all this stuff? And that's why people find it boring, I think, because they stall, because there's so much to do. And it's directly going against what the previous games have trained them to do. But what I think this trends towards, and it's something we almost touched on, well, two angles on this. We directly touched on it earlier with the discussion about Numenera, and what happens when the player party unanimously decides to just abandon the mission. But also, I had a discussion, as I said, with the guys designing Torment Tides of Numenera, which is both the sequel to Planescape Torment and a Numenera game, where we discussed, one of the themes of their game is abandonment, in terms of, what's one of the narrative themes of the game, in terms of relationships between characters and themes and things like that. And I think it's a really interesting question for RPGs to answer, what does it mean to not do something? Because something that games can't really do is, by nature of being games, simulate or incorporate into a simulation the act of not doing something. Like, if there's one thing that actually defines game playing, it's action. It is making decisions or choosing courses through a potential web of possibility. Like, to not participate is to not play. And that is really interesting in a way, because it means that if you choose, the example's a simple one, like, not doing a quest in Mass Effect because you don't agree with the parameters of the quest, but being being passively punished for doing so by missing game resources that are kind of abstract but absolute. So it's a really interesting problem. The answer to the what's an RPG that doesn't have RPG mechanics is interactive fiction. It's text adventure. It's a Telltale game. Like, you should. Yeah. This guy, I think, should be playing the new Game of Thrones series, or Walking Dead, or Wolf Among Us, or the Borderlands thing they just started, because those are games that don't track your progress in terms of XP, but in terms of decisions. But ultimately, those are the important decisions, right? And actually, like, when it comes back around to it, Numenera, the pen and paper system, has an interesting answer to this, and it's something I really want games to gain. And again, something I discussed with the guys making Torment, which is, I think XP systems are more interesting the lower the scale you're talking about. So, like, most XP systems are like, you got 250 XP, you need 10,000 XP to level up, right? You're talking in orders of hundreds and thousands or millions most of the time. Like, the way Numenera works is a proper level up, really, is 4 XP. And in order to go up a tier, which is the major kind of character advancement thing, it's 4 XP advancements. So 16 XP total. But you're still talking about small numbers. And what that allows you to do is make the act of gaining, like, 1 XP a thing in and of itself. Like, you guys have experienced this playing the pen and paper stuff.
Yeah.
That, like, getting 1 XP, like, I give XP to the party when a situation is resolved, and I don't really give a shit how. There are other circumstances where this comes in, but the idea in that system is that, like, an XP it used to be literally a marble I give you when you've successfully done a thing, and I don't really care how you've done it, and that can include refusing the thing. And I think that's a better model for, like, role-playing design generally, where it's like, XP represents your character's linear progression along a track of experience. That's tangentially related to the actions they actually take. What's important is participation one way or another that can include passive participation, rather than it having to be, you took on this task and solved it in some way. Maybe that's a woolly way of kind of getting around it, but I think games need to move away from the notion of XP as points and towards the notion as, like, XP as, like, ongoing bookmarks in a kind of character's advancement. Yeah. That doesn't comment on the kinds of things you've done, but simply kind of denotes that a chapter has ended or a situation has resolved itself.
Well, it's this idea of kind of there almost being a gradient that you have to climb, and by being active you get the points that mean that you have progressed up that gradient. And then other stuff isn't sort of considered in the same way. It's not valid. It doesn't help you progress. It's not part of your character's evolution because it doesn't push you further up that gradient.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. I suppose does anyone have any comments on how you would potentially replace an XP system in order to give
it's
a sense of character
interesting because
you maybe need to get away from giving rewards for just doing a thing. Like, if you're giving someone a deep moral choice, and then you're saying, this particular choice in that situation leads to this much XP, and the other choice doesn't, because it involves not doing anything. That's sort of a weird thing to say. Like, it's really, if your analog for experience is, like, just having made that choice. Like, if the reason you want to reward the player is, you've come to a decision on this, and it's a difficult decision, then you shouldn't be saying, because this one leads to a quest, and you defeat a boss, that gives you this many items and this much XP, whereas not doing it gets you nothing, because that's not combat, and that's not, we don't reward that. if the thing you want to reward is the player making decisions, then both decisions should lead to basically the same.
I think partly it taps into a certain amount of the previous question in that, you know, there are other ways to play games that are perhaps equally valid or sort of more fun for the player, but that some XP systems are just set up to assume that one way is more valid than others, or more interesting or more successful or more, you know, worthy than others, and that even though the player might be coming at it from a completely different angle or getting something very different but equally enjoyable from the experience, that's somehow wrong, then that becomes a problem, because it just means perhaps you haven't considered other people's, you know, viewpoints, or it means that you could have shared it with other, you know, players and got different results, or even just that. Yeah,
It's like,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's a question of, I think one of the signs that games had gotten really like comfortable having a message and being games would be that they rewarded you for not fully participating in what's happening, right? Like the notion that you get more XP for doing the harder version of the solution, more violent, whatever it is that makes it harder, is rooted in the notion of a high score. Like it's rooted in the notion of a skill-based progression system, and often that's not the right way to tell the story a game might be setting out to tell. Like, if a game ever wants to be like Star Trek, like I'm putting this example in my head, but like, you know, if you want to be the next generation, you've got to account for both combat and completely passive solutions to problems, right? Like, you know, even that I deliberately picked Star Trek because it's not like a high literary example of, you know, like, you know, what games as art could be, but like look at how like TV or like sci-fi TV as art managed to do it. And they managed to do it by saying that, guess what? Not every story ends up with Picard deciding that, yes, the best thing to do is literally fight everybody, which may be more of a Kirk thing. Like, it's the notion that, you know, there's this twist ending where it's like, actually, the passive approach is probably the best one, or whatever. That, for me, strikes me as like, that's something that sort of TV sci-fi got its head around. But games are still kind of like slowly getting towards, where it's like, there should be the situation where the player just doesn't take the quest, and the game doesn't meaningfully punish them for it in any way, shape, or form, because it's a perfectly valid way to approach that situation. And that's tricky because of the way it interacts economically with how making content for games works, where it's like, if no one's if it's optional, why do it? But important, I think. Like, it's kind of like the last barrier that needs to be broken down before you can kind of say that games offer a comprehensive array of, well, a comprehensive agency to the player.
Yeah, because it means that any way, or not any way, but, you know, the variety of ways that in which they choose to engage with it or play it or value the things that they find within it are equally valid, or at least, you know, they don't sort of get punished for doing something different if the game isn't necessarily set up to be that moral judge on that subject.
And as a benefit, it would mean that games could be about something other than, is it weird to do actions sometimes? Which is pretty much the plot of BioShock. According to Chris Pratt.
Literal Chris Pratt.
And I think that's all the questions we have. Well, it's actually, there's a lot of questions. So it's all the questions we have time for. The end of that sentence, which I opted not to say for no particular reason. God, that's a lot of rum.
You can send us questions at creatingcrowbar.com. You can post questions on our forum at creatingcrowbar.com/forum. And you can tweet us questions. We are at creatingcrowbar on Twitter. And you can also tweet us individually. I am at Pentadact, Pentadact. Pip is...
Oh no. I'm at Philippa War, which is at PHILIPPAWARR. Yes! No, not yes! The rest of it was fine. Oh god.
Start all of your tweets to Pip with yes.
Up.
I am at C Thurston on Twitter, which is spelled PHILI PPARRYES.
All that remains is to thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
I think that went well.